In a quiet room, somewhere in the heart of a sleeping city, a single blue light pushes back against the darkness. It's the light of a screen, held by a hand that has forgotten its own weight. The thumb moves in a practiced, endless scroll, swiping past curated joys, manufactured outrages, and the polished lives of strangers. With every flick, a tiny, silent hope rises. The hope for something to catch the eye, to fill a space, to answer a question that hasn't yet been formed. But nothing does. And what remains when the screen is finally put down is a familiar, hollow echo, a feeling of being profoundly connected to everything and to nothing at all. This scene, in its countless variations, is the quiet affliction of our time. We live in an age of overwhelming abundance, a world saturated with information, with choice, with the relentless pressure to be more, do more, and have more. Yet, beneath this glittering surface, there is a deep and pervasive hunger. A hunger for stillness in a world of noise, a hunger for meaning in a sea of data, a hunger for a genuine connection, not just to others, but to the very core of our own being. We have become experts at distraction, masters of filling every spare moment with a podcast, a video, a thought, a worry. We are running, constantly running, from the quiet and sometimes uncomfortable truth of our inner inner world. The stress, the anxiety, the low hum of dissatisfaction. This has become the background radiation of modern existence, a state of being we have tragically accepted as normal. But what if this is not the only way to live? What if we were to stop running, just for a moment, and turn to face the direction we have been fleeing from? What if the solution to our inner turmoil is not to be found in another purchase, another achievement, or another escape, but in the simple, radical act of turning inward? There exists a path, an ancient and time-tested map for this inner landscape. It is not a religion to be blindly followed, nor a dogma to be memorized. It is, instead, a practical set of tools for the mind, a gentle science of experience. It is a way of looking, not for something new, but of seeing what has always been there, with newfound clarity. This is the path of Zen, the path of awareness, an invitation to navigate the pain of life, not by avoiding it, but by understanding it, and in doing so, to discover the unshakable peace that lies just beneath the surface of the storm. To begin this journey, we must first be honest about where we are standing. We must be willing to look at the landscape of our own lives, not with judgment, but with a clear and gentle courage. The first step on this path is not about finding an immediate answer, but about asking the right question, about acknowledging a fundamental truth of our existence. In the ancient language of this path, this truth is called dukkha. In English, it is often translated as suffering, and this single word can cause us to recoil. It sounds heavy, dramatic, and final. We think of immense tragedy, of deep grief, of unbearable physical pain. And while dukkha certainly includes these things, its meaning is far broader, more subtle, and much more intimate. It is not just the shattering crash of a car, but also the constant, low-grade vibration of a wheel that is slightly out of alignment. It is the persistent, quiet hum of dissatisfaction that so often underlies even our most pleasant moments. It is the feeling that something is not quite right, that a deeper sense of ease remains just out of reach. It is the friction between the world as it is and the world as we desperately wish it would be. The teachings of the Buddha begin with a simple, yet radical, proposition. There is dukkha. This is not a pessimistic decree. It is not a curse or a punishment. It is a diagnosis. It is the compassionate observation of a physician who, before offering a cure, must first name the illness. To acknowledge dukkha is to acknowledge the reality of the human condition. It is to release ourselves from the exhausting pretense that everything should be perfect, that we should always be happy, and that any feeling of unease is a sign of personal failure. In our modern culture, we are often encouraged to suppress these feelings, to put on a brave face, to focus only on the positive. But this is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It takes immense energy, and sooner or later, the ball will burst to the surface, often with surprising force. The path of Zen does not ask us to do this. It invites us to do the opposite. It invites us to be brave enough to simply look, to feel, to admit the truth of our own experience without flinching. This act of honest recognition is the very first and most essential step toward freedom. To understand this more deeply, we can look at dukkha in three distinct flavors. The first is the most obvious, the one we all recognize as suffering. It is called dukkha, the suffering of painful experience. This is the sting of a harsh word, the ache of a lonely heart, the physical pain of illness or injury, the deep grief that comes with loss. It is the raw, undeniable pain of life's difficult moments. It is the traffic jam when you are already late, the unexpected bill in the mail, the diagnosis from a doctor. This kind of suffering is an unavoidable part of life, a direct and visceral experience that needs no complex explanation. We all know it, we have all felt it, and we all try to avoid it. The second flavor is more subtle and perhaps more pervasive in our modern lives. It is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is the anxiety that is born from our happy moments. It is the pain that comes from the fact that nothing lasts. Think of a perfect, beautiful day on vacation. The sun is warm, the company is good, everything feels just right. And yet, in the back of the mind, a tiny voice whispers, "This will end soon. I have to go back to work on Monday." That whisper, that subtle anxiety that taints the present joy, is viparinama dukkha. It is the stress of getting a promotion, immediately followed by the fear of not being good enough to keep it. It is the beautiful, fragile nature of a blooming flower, which contains within it the certainty of wilting. We cling so tightly to pleasure, to success, to youth, to love, and because all of these things are by their very nature impermanent, our clinging itself becomes a source of suffering. We are in a constant, losing battle with the flow of time, and this struggle, this resistance to the natural unfolding of life, creates a deep-seated and persistent unease. The third and most profound flavor of dukkha is called sankhara dukkha. This is the suffering of conditioned existence itself. It is the background dissatisfaction that is woven into the very fabric of being a separate, vulnerable self in the world. It is not tied to a specific painful event or the loss of a pleasant one. It is the general, underlying feeling of incompleteness. It's the reason we can have everything we thought we wanted, the good job, the nice house, the loving family, and still lie awake at night with a vague sense of emptiness, asking, is this all there is? It is the subtle effort and stress involved in simply maintaining our identity, in defending our opinions, in managing our image. It is the feeling that drives us to endlessly scroll through our phones, not looking for anything in particular, but just trying to distract ourselves from a fundamental disquiet. This is the most difficult dukkha to see, because it is the water we swim in. It is the baseline state we have become so accustomed to that we no longer even notice its presence. We only notice the symptoms it creates: our restlessness, our anxiety, and our endless search for something more. To make this real, we can simply observe this truth in our daily lives. From the moment we wake up, dukkha is present. It is the resistance to getting out of a warm bed. It is the slight tension in the shoulders while reading stressful emails. It is the small disappointment when a planned lunch with a friend is cancelled. It is the flicker of envy we feel when seeing someone else's success on social media. It is the worry about our children's future, the concern about our aging parents, the quiet fear of our own mortality. These are not grand tragedies. They are the small, accumulated moments of friction that make up so much of our waking lives. By learning to see them not as personal failings, but simply as manifestations of dukkha, we begin to depersonalize our struggle. We see that we are not alone in this. This is part of the shared human story. There is a powerful story that illustrates the heart of this teaching. It is said that in life, we will all be struck by arrows. A man is walking through the forest, and an arrow flies through the air and strikes him in the arm. This is painful. It is shocking. This first arrow is the unavoidable pain of life, the illness, the loss, the accident, the betrayal. It is dukkha dukkha. It happens to everyone. But then, the man looks at the wound and begins to think, why me? Why did this have to happen today? This is terrible. I can't believe this. The person who shot this arrow is evil. My life is ruined now. As he spins this story of blame, resentment, and despair, he picks up a second arrow and he stabs it into himself, right next to the first one. This second arrow is our reaction to the first. It is the narrative we build around our pain. It is our resistance, our craving for things to be different than they are. This second arrow is the suffering that we create for ourselves. The first arrow is mandatory. The second one is optional. The entire practice of Zen, in many ways, is learning how not to shoot ourselves with that second arrow. It is learning to be with the pain of the first arrow, with enough wisdom and compassion that we don't add a layer of self-inflicted suffering on top of it. Therefore, when we are invited to look at dukkha, we are not being invited to dwell in misery. We are being invited to become spiritual realists. We are being asked to find the courage to remove our rose-colored glasses and see life as it is, in all its beauty and all its pain. This clear-eyed seeing is the most compassionate thing we can do for ourselves. It is the moment we stop fighting with reality and begin the journey of learning how to live in harmony with it. It is the end of denial and the beginning of authentic healing. And once we have been brave enough to look this fundamental truth in the eye, once we have acknowledged the presence of this deep dissatisfaction in our lives, a natural and vital question arises. If this is the condition, what is its cause? Where does all this friction, this struggle, this suffering truly come from? This question, born from our honest investigation, is what opens the door to the next stage of our journey. Having stood on the firm ground of acknowledgement, having named the quiet disease of our lives dukkha, we can now venture deeper. A diagnosis, however accurate, is incomplete without an understanding of the cause. If we are to find true relief, we must look beyond the symptoms and seek the root of the condition itself. The wisdom of this ancient path offers a diagnosis that is both startling in its simplicity and profound in its implications. It suggests that the primary cause of our suffering, the very engine that drives the wheel of our discontent, is a force within us called tanha. This Pali word is often translated as craving or desire, but its true essence is captured more powerfully by the word thirst. It is not a gentle wishing, but a deep, burning, relentless thirst. It is the insatiable itch in the heart, the forward-leaning momentum of the mind that constantly seeks satisfaction outside of itself. It is the belief that our peace, our happiness, our completeness is located in the next thing, the next person, the next experience. This thirst is the architect of the second arrow, the force that whispers in our ear, telling us that reality is not good enough as it is, and that we must grasp and pull the world towards us to fix it. This fundamental thirst manifests in three primary ways, some more obvious than others. The first, and most familiar, is kamatanha, the thirst for sense pleasures. This is the craving that is driven by our five senses and our thoughts. It is the desire for a delicious taste, a beautiful sight, a pleasant sound, a comforting touch, a captivating idea. In our modern world, this thirst is amplified 1,000-fold. It is the impulse that leads to the add to cart button, the binge-watching of a television series late into the night, the endless scrolling through social media feeds, each post a potential little hit of pleasure or stimulation. It's the craving for the perfect coffee, the new car, the luxurious vacation. We live in a culture that is a grand temple built to kamatanha, constantly promising that the next purchase, the next meal, or the next click will finally deliver the lasting satisfaction we seek. But as we all know from our own experience, the pleasure derived from these things is fleeting. The new car becomes just a car. The delicious meal ends, and we are hungry again. This thirst for sense pleasure is like drinking salt water. It seems to quench our thirst for a moment, but it ultimately leaves us thirstier than before. The second form of this thirst is deeper and more subtle. It is bhavatana, the thirst for existence, for becoming. This is not just the basic survival instinct. It is the ego's desperate project of self-perpetuation and self-aggrandizement. It is the craving to be someone, to have a solid, lasting, and impressive identity. It is the ambition that drives us to build a legacy, to be recognized, to be remembered. It is the deep fear of anonymity, of being insignificant. This thirst fuels our attachment to our youth, our health, our reputation, and our accomplishments. It is the force that makes us cling to life, not just in the biological sense, but to the story of our life, the narrative of me. This thirst for becoming is also the engine of so-called self-improvement. When it comes from a place of lack, it is the desire to become happier, to become more enlightened, to become a better person, as if our current self is fundamentally flawed and needs to be replaced. It turns even the spiritual path into another project of the ego, another destination to be reached, another identity to be acquired. The third form of thirst is perhaps the most paradoxical. It is vibhavatanya, the thirst for non-existence, for annihilation. When faced with a painful feeling, a difficult situation, or an aspect of ourselves we don't like, a powerful urge arises to make it go away, to destroy it. This is the energy of aversion, of pushing away. In its most extreme form, it can manifest as suicidal thoughts, the ultimate desire to annihilate the self and its suffering. But in our daily lives, it appears in countless smaller ways. It is the person who drinks a bottle of wine to numb the pain of a difficult day at work. It is the workaholic who buries themselves in tasks to avoid the feeling of emptiness. It is the sudden flash of anger that wants to obliterate the person or situation that is frustrating us. It is the desire to escape, to check out, to go numb through television, food, or endless distraction. It is the voice that says, "I can't stand this feeling." This thirst for non-existence is just the other side of the coin from the thirst for existence. Both are a violent rejection of the present moment as it is. One tries to grasp and hold on to the pleasant. The other tries to push away and destroy the unpleasant. Both are rooted in the same fundamental refusal to be with reality on its own terms. These three thirsts work together to create a powerful and often unconscious psychological loop. It begins with a feeling of lack, a subtle pain, or emptiness. This feeling is uncomfortable, so tanha arises, the thirst for something to fix it. The mind then projects a solution onto an external object or experience. If only I had that new phone, I would feel happy. Or, if I could just get away from this situation, I would feel peace. We then expend energy to seek and grasp that thing. For a brief moment, upon obtaining it, there is a sense of relief, of pleasure. The itch is scratched, but because all things are transient, the pleasure inevitably fades. The novelty wears off, the distraction ends, and the original underlying feeling of lack and dissatisfaction returns, often with even more intensity. We are left back where we started, only now the mind is even more convinced that the next object, the next experience, will be the one that finally works. And so the cycle begins again, a treadmill of seeking and fleeting satisfaction that can last a lifetime, leaving us perpetually exhausted and unfulfilled. To see this mechanism clearly is to see the very foundation of our consumer culture, which functions as a massive, externalized system for perpetuating tanha. Every advertisement, every billboard, every influencer's post is a carefully crafted message designed to create or amplify a sense of lack within you. They are designed to make you feel that you are not thin enough, not successful enough, not happy enough, and that the solution, conveniently, is available for purchase. Our economy depends on us remaining in a state of constant, low-grade dissatisfaction. It depends on our unexamined belief that happiness is something that can be bought, consumed, and owned. We are conditioned from birth to be thirsty and to believe that the only water available is outside of ourselves. There is a simple and profound story that captures the essence of this self-imprisonment. In India, a method for trapping monkeys involves a coconut chained to a stake. A small hole is drilled into the coconut, just large enough for a monkey to slide its open hand inside. Peanuts are then placed inside the coconut. A monkey, driven by its desire for the peanuts, will reach its hand in and grasp a fistful. But when it tries to withdraw its hand, it finds it cannot. The fist, now clenched around the peanuts, is too large for the hole. The monkey will pull and shriek. It will struggle for hours, sometimes until the hunters arrive. It is trapped. But what is it that truly traps the monkey? It is not the coconut. It is not the chain. It is the monkey's own clenched fist. At any moment, all it has to do to be free is to open its hand, to let go of the peanuts. But its craving, its tanha, is so strong that it cannot bring itself to do so. It is held captive by its own grasping. We are all, in some way, that monkey. We are holding on so tightly to our desires, our opinions, our identities, our hopes, and our fears, believing that they are the source of our security and happiness. But it is this very act of clinging that traps us in the cycle of suffering. The path to freedom, then, is not about destroying the coconut or even getting rid of the thirst itself, but about developing the wisdom to see the nature of our own clenched fist. It is about understanding that the tight grip of our craving is the true source of our confinement. By looking directly at this thirst, this tanha, in all its forms, we begin to loosen its unconscious hold over us. We start to see the possibility of another way, a way of opening the hand. This leads us to the next crucial inquiry. What is the nature of these peanuts that we are clinging to so desperately? If our attachment to them is causing us pain, then perhaps it is time to examine them more closely. We have journeyed into the heart of our own restlessness, and we have named its cause tanha, the insatiable thirst that keeps us grasping for a satisfaction that always seems just out of reach. We have seen how our own clenched fist, holding on tightly to the peanuts of our desire, is the true source of our confinement. Now, we must ask a crucial question. What is the nature of these things we are so desperate to hold? What are the peanuts, the pleasures, the identities, and the moments that we cling to with such force? The answer to this question is another fundamental truth, a key that can unlock the grip of our craving. This truth is called anicca, or impermanence. It is the simple, observable, and universal law that everything changes. Nothing is static. Nothing is permanent. Everything that arises will, in time, pass away. The entire universe, from the grandest galaxy to the most fleeting thought, is engaged in a constant, unceasing dance of creation and dissolution. Like the concept of dukkha, the idea of impermanence can, at first, sound like a pessimistic or nihilistic philosophy. It can evoke a sense of hopelessness, a feeling that nothing matters if it all just disappears. But this is a profound misunderstanding. Anicca is not a philosophy to be believed in. It is a reality to be observed. It is not a grim pronouncement, but a liberating truth. To understand it, we need only to look. Look at the world around you. The seasons turn, one into the other, in a reliable, endless cycle. A tiny seed pushes through the soil, grows into a mighty tree, flourishes for a time, and eventually returns to the earth from which it came. The clouds in the sky are never the same from one moment to the next, constantly shifting, forming, and dissolving. The majestic mountains themselves, which seem like symbols of permanence, are slowly but surely being worn down by wind and rain. You are not seeing the same world that your ancestors saw, and your descendants will see a world that is different still. This is not sad. It is simply the nature of reality. It is a world of flow, of process, of energy in motion. Now, turn that gaze inward. Look at your own body. Is it the same body you had 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even 1 year ago? Every cell in your body is constantly dying and being replaced. The person you see in the mirror today is a different collection of atoms and cells than the person who was there yesterday. You are not a static object. You are a biological process, a river of constant physical change. The child is gone, the adolescent is gone, and one day, the adult you are now will also be gone. We resist this truth with creams and diets and desperate attempts to halt the hands of time, but this is like trying to command the tide not to turn. The resistance itself is futile and exhausting. Even more immediate and undeniable is the impermanence of our own minds. Take a moment to simply watch your thoughts. A memory of breakfast appears, then a worry about a future meeting, then a snippet of a song, then a judgment about the sound of a distant siren. Your mind is a waterfall of thoughts, feelings, sensations, and moods, each one arising, lingering for a moment, and then vanishing to be replaced by the next. Where is the feeling of happiness you had yesterday? Where is the anger you felt last week? They were real, they were powerful, and yet they were as transient as clouds passing in the sky. We try to build our identity on these shifting sands. We say, I am an angry person, or I am a happy person. But the truth is that we are simply a space in which anger and happiness can temporarily arise and pass away. Nothing in our inner world is solid. The suffering we experience, our dukkha, does not come from the fact of change itself. It comes directly from our resistance to this fundamental law of life. Our minds, driven by tanha, are constantly trying to do the impossible, to freeze the river. When we experience something pleasant, a loving moment, a great success, a feeling of joy, we immediately try to grasp it, to hold on to it, to build a dam around it, so it will never leave. This clinging to the pleasant is a recipe for anxiety, because deep down, we know we cannot succeed. Our effort to make the moment permanent prevents us from fully enjoying it while it is here, and it guarantees our disappointment when it inevitably changes. Likewise, when we experience something unpleasant, illness, failure, rejection, sadness, we resist it with all our might. We push it away, deny it, and try to build a wall to keep it out. This aversion to the unpleasant only amplifies our pain. It is the energy of the second arrow. We are not only wounded by the event, but we exhaust ourselves by fighting a battle against the unchangeable reality that the event has occurred. Our suffering is the measure of the distance between what is and what we want to be. The path of wisdom, then, is not to try and stop the waves of life, but to learn how to surf them. A skilled surfer does not command the ocean. She does not get angry at the size of the waves. Instead, she studies the nature of the ocean. She learns to feel its rhythms, to respect its power, and to align her own energy with the energy of the wave. She becomes one with the flow. To embrace anicca is to become a surfer of life. It is to develop the mental flexibility and balance to ride the waves of joy with full participation and gratitude, knowing they will crest and fade. And it is to navigate the waves of sorrow with courage and presence, knowing that they too will pass. This approach does not remove the ups and downs of life, but it removes the terror and resistance that turns those ups and downs into profound suffering. There is a beautiful, liberating hope hidden within this truth. Because everything changes, it means that no state of being is final. In our darkest moments, when we are overwhelmed by grief, fear, or despair, the wisdom of impermanence is a gentle hand on our shoulder, reminding us, this too shall pass. The pain will not last forever. The confusion will not last forever. The sorrow will not last forever. The clouds will part, and the sun will shine again. This is not wishful thinking. It is a guarantee offered by the very nature of existence. Anicca is the promise that no winter lasts forever, and that spring is always a possibility. A revered Zen master had a favorite teacup. It was beautiful, delicate, and he used it every day. He would often hold it up to his students and say, "To me, this cup is already broken." He didn't say this out of morbidity or a lack of appreciation. On the contrary, because he held the truth of its inevitable shattering in his mind, he was able to love and appreciate the cup more fully in every single moment. He never took its presence for granted. He cherished its form, its weight, its warmth, because he knew his time with it was finite. So, one day, when a student accidentally knocked the cup from a shelf and it shattered on the floor, the master was completely calm. He looked at the pieces and simply said, "Of course." There was no shock, no anger, no grief. He had already let go of the cup while it was still whole. This story is a profound teaching on freedom. To live with the awareness of anicca is to see that everything we love, our relationships, our possessions, our own bodies, our very lives is already broken. And because of this, We are freed to love it all more fiercely, more gratefully, and without the paralyzing fear of loss. By understanding impermanence, we begin to see the futility of our clinging. Why grasp so tightly to a handful of water that is already slipping through our fingers? By seeing this clearly, the grip of Tanha naturally begins to loosen. We move from being a victim of life's changes to being a curious and graceful participant in its dance. We are still in the river, but we are no longer fighting the current. And as we float in this ever-changing stream of experience, another, even deeper question begins to surface. If my body is always changing, if my thoughts are always changing, if my feelings are always changing, then who or what is the one who is experiencing all this change? Where, in this constant flux, is the permanent, solid me that I so strongly feel myself to be? This question leads us directly to the next great exploration, into the very nature of the self. We have stood at the edge of the river of existence and recognized its ceaseless flow, the truth of anicca, or impermanence. We have seen that everything we try to grasp is like water, slipping through our fingers the moment we clench our fist. This realization, while profound, naturally leads to an even more intimate and unsettling question. As we watch this endless stream of changing thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations, we must ask, who is the watcher? Where, in all this flux, is the permanent, solid, unchanging I that we feel ourselves to be? This inquiry takes us to the very heart of the Zen path, to a teaching that is perhaps the most radical, the most challenging, and ultimately, the most liberating. It is the teaching of anatta, which is often translated as no self, or perhaps more accurately, not self. And let us be very clear from the beginning. This teaching is not a declaration that you do not exist. It is not an invitation to nihilism or a denial of your unique life and experience. You are here. You are reading these words. You are breathing. The teaching of anatta is not meant to negate your existence, but to invite you to investigate its true nature with a radical honesty. It suggests that the self we believe in so strongly, this feeling of a solid, continuous entity residing somewhere behind our eyes, is not what it appears to be. It is more like a story than a thing, more like a process than an entity, more like a wave in the ocean than a separate drop of water. From the outside, a house looks like a single, solid thing. But when you go inside, you find it is a collection of components: walls, a roof, a floor, rooms, windows. You cannot find the house separate from its parts. The word house is a convenient label for an assembly. The teaching of anatta suggests that the self is much the same. We live with the deeply ingrained feeling that there is a permanent me at our core. This me is the hero of our life story. It was there when we were 5. It is here now, and we expect it to be there in the future. But let us look for it. Are you your body? If you were to lose an arm or a leg, would you be less of a you? Most would say no. If you receive an organ transplant, do you become part of someone else? Number. Our bodies are constantly changing, aging, getting sick, and getting well. The body is a part of our experience, but it cannot be the permanent self we are looking for. Are you your mind? But which part of your mind? Are you your thoughts? Your thoughts are in constant motion, a chaotic parade of ideas, worries, and memories. If you were your thoughts, you would be a different person with every new thought that arises. Are you your feelings? Your emotions are even more fleeting, shifting from joy to sadness, to boredom in the space of a single hour. If you were your feelings, yourself would be born and die 1,000 times a day. We believe we have a fixed personality, but that too changes with time, experience, and context. The self is a story, a narrative thread that our mind brilliantly weaves together from the raw material of memory and sensation to create a sense of continuity. It is a necessary and useful convention for navigating the world, but it is a convention, not an ultimate reality. To make this investigation more systematic, the ancient teachings broke down our experience of a self into 5 categories, known as the 5 skandhas, or aggregates. Think of these as the 5 main heaps of components from which we build the idea of me. The first is form. Our physical body, which we have already seen, is impermanent and not a stable self. The second is feeling, the raw sensations that arise whenever our senses make contact with the world. These are categorized as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. A cool breeze is pleasant. A loud noise is unpleasant. The feeling of our clothes on our skin is often neutral. These feelings are just flickers of raw data, constantly changing. They are not a self. The third is perception. This is the part of the mind that recognizes and labels. It sees a shape and color and says, "That is a red car." It feels a sensation and says, "That is pain." This labeling process is also fluid and conditioned by our past. It is a function, not an entity. The fourth is mental formations. This is a very broad and important category. It includes all our thoughts, our opinions, our beliefs, our biases, our habits, our moods, our intentions, and our desires. It is the active, chattering, storytelling part of the mind. But when we look closely, these are just mental events. A thought is just a thought. An opinion is just an opinion. They arise and pass away. We can have them without being them. This is a crucial distinction. You are the sky in which the clouds of thought drift by. You are not the clouds themselves. The fifth and final aggregate is consciousness. This is the fundamental faculty of awareness itself, the light that allows all the other aggregates to be known. There is seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness, thinking consciousness. But even this awareness is not a monolithic, independent self. It is always dependent. It is always consciousness of something. When we investigate our experience in this way, looking for a self in each of these 5 heaps, we come up empty-handed. We cannot locate a permanent, independent owner of these experiences. The self is simply the label we give to the dynamic, interdependent flow of these 5 processes. It is like the word chariot. A chariot is made of wheels, an axle, a frame. If you take all the parts away, where is the chariot? The chariot was never there as a separate thing. It was a concept applied to the functioning assembly. In the same way, the self is not there as a separate thing. It is a concept we apply to the functioning assembly of our body and mind. Understanding this is not just a dry, intellectual exercise. It has profound implications for our emotional lives. So much of our human conflict and suffering comes from our fierce attachment to and defense of this imaginary self, this ego. When we have an inflated sense of self, it leads to pride, arrogance, and the need to always be right. When we have a deflated sense of self, it leads to insecurity, shame, and low self-esteem. Both conditions are rooted in the same fundamental mistake of believing in a solid self that can be measured and judged. The fear of failure, the fear of embarrassment, the fear of death. These are all fears for the survival of this constructed identity. Jealousy arises when we perceive that another self has something that our self lacks. By seeing through the illusion of the separate self, We are freed from the exhausting, lifelong burden of having to defend it, promote it, and protect it from harm. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly illustrates this liberation. A man is enjoying a quiet moment, rowing his boat in the middle of a misty lake. Suddenly, another boat comes out of the fog and rams into the side of his boat with a loud thud. The man is instantly filled with rage. "Who is this idiot?" he yells into the fog. "Watch where you are going." He is ready for a confrontation, his body tensed with anger. But as he looks closer, he sees that the other boat is empty. It simply broke loose from its mooring and was drifting with the current. In that instant, all of his anger completely vanishes. There is no one to be angry at. There was no someone who wronged me. The bump was just an event, an impersonal happening. The story teaches us that most of our anger, resentment, and hurt feelings arise not from events themselves, but from our belief that there is a malicious self in the other boat who is intentionally trying to harm ourselves. When we begin to see that most of the boats that bump into us in life are also empty-driven, not by a solid, malicious self, but by the impersonal currents of confusion, pain, fear, and conditioning, our own reactivity begins to soften. Compassion becomes possible because we see their struggle instead of a personal attack. So anatta is not a dark void, but a wide open space. It is the ultimate relief. It is the freedom of putting down a heavy bag that you did not even realize you were carrying your entire life. When the rigid walls between me and you become more transparent, a natural and effortless empathy can flow between us. When we are no longer trapped by a fixed definition of who we are free to change, to grow, and to be spontaneous. We are no longer a noun, but a verb. We are no longer a statue, but a dance. And so, we are left here with these two profound insights: that everything is an impermanent flowing river, and that the self we thought was navigating this river is itself just a part of the flow. These are not ideas to simply be believed. They are truths to be experienced. This leads us to the most practical and essential question of all. If this is the true nature of reality, how do we begin to see it for ourselves? Not just as a concept in our heads, but as a living, breathing reality in our hearts. To do this, we need more than philosophy. We need a tool. We need a practice that allows us to quiet the noise and simply observe the unfolding of our own experience, moment by moment. That tool, that practice, is the foundation upon which this entire path is built. We have journeyed through the profound and challenging landscapes of impermanence and not self. We have seen, intellectually, that the world is a flowing river, and that the solid self we believe in cannot be found within its currents. But an intellectual understanding, no matter how profound, is like a map of a beautiful country. It can show you the way, but it cannot give you the experience of the sun on your skin or the scent of the pine trees. To truly benefit from these insights, to transform them from philosophy into a lived reality, we need a way to experience them directly. We need a tool that can cut through the relentless noise of our own minds and allow us to see what is actually here, in this present moment. That tool is the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness, in its essence, is incredibly simple. It is the energy of being present and awake to our own lives. It is the gentle, yet firm, capacity to pay attention, on purpose, in the present moment, without judgment. This last part, without judgment, is perhaps the most important and the most radical. We are constantly judging our experience. We label things good or bad, right or wrong, pleasant or unpleasant, and we get caught in the drama of our own commentary. Mindfulness invites us to take a step back from this endless cycle of judgment and simply observe. It is about developing a new relationship with our own mind, a relationship of friendly curiosity rather than one of struggle or control. There is a common misconception that mindfulness or meditation is about emptying the mind, about stopping our thoughts. This idea is a source of great frustration for many who try to practice, because trying to stop your thoughts is like trying to flatten the waves in the ocean. The effort itself creates more turbulence. The mind's nature is to think, just as the heart's nature is to beat. The goal of mindfulness is not to stop the thoughts, but to stop being completely swept away by them. Imagine you are standing on the side of a busy road. The cars are your thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Our normal state of being is like jumping onto every single car that passes, being carried away down the road in a chaotic and exhausting journey. Mindfulness is the practice of learning to simply sit on the bench by the side of the road. You still see the cars. You notice the red cars, the blue cars, the fast ones, the slow ones, but you are no longer compulsively chasing after them. You are allowing them to come and go without getting entangled. You are cultivating a quiet space of awareness that is separate from the contents of your awareness. To cultivate this ability, we need an anchor. We need a calm, stable place to rest our attention, a home base to which we can return when we notice we have been carried away. The most universal and accessible anchor is the breath. Your breath has two qualities that make it a perfect object for mindfulness practice. First, it is always with you, from the moment of your birth to the moment of your death. You don't need any special equipment or location to find it. Second, the breath is always happening in the present moment. You cannot take a breath that is in the past, nor can you take one that is in the future. To be aware of your breathing is, by definition, to be present. The practice itself is simple. You can begin right now. Find a posture that is both comfortable and alert. You can be sitting on a chair with your feet flat on the floor or on a cushion on the ground. Allow your back to be straight, but not rigid, letting your body be dignified and relaxed. You can gently close your eyes or leave them softly open with your gaze lowered. Now, simply bring your attention to the sensation of your own breathing. Don't try to control it or change it in any way. Just observe it. Feel the air entering your nostrils, cool and fresh. Feel the gentle rise of your chest and abdomen as you breathe in, and the gentle fall as you breathe out. Choose one spot where the sensation is most vivid for you, the tip of your nose, your chest, or your belly, and let your attention rest there, like a butterfly resting on a flower. Just be with one in-breath from its beginning to its end, and be with one out-breath from its beginning to its end. Inevitably, your mind will wander, a thought will arise, a sound will distract you, a memory will surface. This is not a mistake. This is not a failure. This is simply what minds do. The moment you notice that your mind has wandered is a moment of victory. It is a moment of mindfulness itself. In that moment of noticing, you have already woken up. And then, with gentleness and patience, as if you were guiding a lost puppy, you simply escort your attention back to the breath. Again and again and again. This is the entire practice. The goal is not to achieve a state of perfect, unbroken concentration. The practice is the act of returning. Every time you bring your attention back to the breath, you are strengthening your mindfulness muscle. You are exercising your capacity to be present, to be aware, and to be kind to yourself. This simple practice creates a profound shift in our relationship to our thoughts. Our default state is to be completely fused with our thinking process. A worried thought arises, and we are worried. An angry thought arises, and we are angry. We are the main character, lost in the drama of our own mental movie. Mindfulness allows us to shift from being the actor in the movie to being the audience member watching the screen. We can begin to see our thoughts as what they are, simply mental events, puffs of energy that arise and pass away. We can notice a thought of worry and internally label it, this is worry, without having to believe its story or follow it down a rabbit hole of anxiety. We can observe the feeling of anger in the body without needing to act on it. This space between stimulus and response, between the thought and our identification with it, is the birthplace of freedom and wisdom. It is where we find the power to choose our response to life, rather than being driven by unconscious habit and reaction. It is how we learn not to fire the second arrow. A great Zen master was once asked how to practice. He said, "When you eat, just eat. When you walk, just walk." He told a story about drinking a cup of tea. When you are drinking your tea, you are completely present for the act of drinking tea. Your mind is not in the future, worrying about your to-do list. Your mind is not in the past, replaying an old conversation. You are simply there, with the experience. You feel the warmth of the cup in your hands. You notice the color and aroma of the tea. You feel the sensation of the warm liquid in your mouth. You are truly alive in that moment. He said that the miracle is not to walk on water. The miracle is to walk on the green earth in the present moment, to appreciate the peace and beauty that are available to us right now, in this very breath. This is the spirit of mindfulness. It is a practice we can bring to any aspect of our lives, transforming mundane activities into opportunities for awareness and peace. Mindfulness, then, is the art of coming home. It is the practice of returning to the present moment, returning to the body, returning to the breath. It is a gentle but powerful antidote to the distracted, anxious, and disconnected state that has become so common in our world. By beginning with the simple, humble act of paying attention to our breath, we lay the foundation for a deeper relationship with ourselves and with the world. We learn the fundamental gesture of awareness. And with this foundation in place, we can begin to explore how to deepen and sustain this practice, how to create a dedicated space in our lives for the formal cultivation of stillness, clarity, and compassion. This takes us from the foundational practice of mindfulness into the dedicated art and science of meditation. Having laid the foundation of mindfulness, having learned the simple, profound gesture of returning our awareness to the present moment through the anchor of the breath, we are now ready to deepen our practice. If mindfulness is the act of noticing that we are lost in the currents of our own mind, then meditation is the dedicated, formal practice of building a sturdy vessel to navigate those currents with grace and skill. It is the time we set aside to deliberately train the mind, much like an athlete trains the body. It is not an escape from reality. It is a courageous journey into the heart of reality itself. It is the practice of sitting down with ourselves, of making an appointment with our own inner life, and learning to listen to the symphony of silence that plays continuously beneath the surface noise of our thoughts. This formal practice of meditation, as it has been developed over centuries, can be understood as having two essential wings, like the two wings of a great bird. Both are necessary to fly. These wings are known as samatha, which means calm or tranquility, and vipassana, which means insight or clear seeing. They work together, supporting and enhancing one another to carry us toward a life of greater peace and wisdom. Let us first explore samatha, the practice of developing a calm and concentrated mind. The primary goal of samatha meditation is to unify and stabilize the mind. gathering its scattered energies and allowing it to rest. Our minds, in their untrained state, are like a wild monkey, constantly leaping from branch to branch, restless and agitated. Or, to use another classic analogy, our minds are like a jar of muddy water. When the jar is shaken, the water is cloudy and opaque. You cannot see through it. Our constant thinking, worrying, and planning is the shaking that keeps our minds cloudy. Samatha practice is the simple act of setting the jar down. We don't try to force the mud to settle. We don't try to filter the water. We simply create the conditions of stillness, and the mind's natural clarity begins to emerge on its own. The primary tool for this is sustained attention on a single object, most commonly the breath. We practice returning our attention to the breath, not just once or twice, but hundreds of times in a single session. In the beginning, this feels like an impossible task. The mind wanders relentlessly, but with patient, gentle repetition, something remarkable begins to happen. The periods of distraction become shorter. The periods of focused attention on the breath become longer. The mind begins to settle. The frantic leaping of the monkey mind slows down, and it becomes content to simply rest. This developing state of stable, effortless focus is known as samadhi, or concentration. It is not a trance, nor is it a state of sleep. It is a state of heightened awareness, where the mind is both relaxed and brilliantly clear, focused and at ease. Cultivating samatha provides a profound sanctuary for our nervous system. It is a direct antidote to the chronic stress and stimulation of modern life, allowing the body and mind to enter a state of deep rest and rejuvenation. This calm, stable mind becomes the essential platform from which the second wing of practice can take flight. The second wing is vipassana, or insight meditation. Once the jar of water has settled, once the lake of the mind has become still and clear through the practice of samatha, we can then look deeply into the water and see what is truly there. Vipassana is the practice of clear seeing. Its purpose is not just to calm the mind, but to understand it. It is the practice of using the focused, stable attention developed in samatha to investigate the nature of our own experience from moment to moment. With vipassana, we broaden the field of our awareness beyond just the breath. We begin to pay attention to the entire flow of our lived experience as it unfolds. A thought arises, and instead of being carried away by its story, we simply note it with a soft mental label, like thinking, and observe it as a pure mental event. We watch it arise, we see its texture, and we see it pass away, directly experiencing the truth of anicca, impermanence. A feeling of sadness appears in the heart. We don't push it away or wallow in it. We turn our gentle, investigative awareness towards it. We note, sadness. Where is it? In the body? Is it heavy or light? Does it have a center or an edge? Does it remain constant, or does it shift and change? By observing it in this way, without judgment, we learn that even the most powerful emotions are impermanent phenomena. We see directly that they are not a solid, permanent me, which is the direct experience of anatta, not self. We systematically observe the nature of our bodily sensations, our sense perceptions, our mental states, watching them all arise and pass away like bubbles in a stream. This is not a cold, analytical dissection. It is an intimate, compassionate exploration. It is the process of learning the truth of our own nature, not from a book or a teacher, but from the infallible authority of our own direct experience. The wisdom that arises from vipassana is what truly liberates the mind. It is this clear seeing that cuts through the roots of our clinging and aversion, the roots of tanha, and frees us from the cycle of suffering. To embark on this formal practice, it is helpful to have some practical guidance on how to create the right conditions. First, consider your posture. The way we hold our body has a direct effect on the mind. The ideal is a posture that embodies both dignity and relaxation. If you are sitting on a chair, it is helpful to sit slightly forward, away from the backrest, with your feet planted firmly and flatly on the floor. If you are sitting on a cushion, you can cross your legs in a way that is comfortable for you. The most important element is to keep your spine relatively straight, without being stiff. Imagine a string gently pulling the crown of your head towards the sky. This uprightness helps to foster alertness and prevent drowsiness. Allow your shoulders to relax, your hands to rest comfortably on your lap, and your chin to be slightly tucked. This physical posture is an outer expression of the inner state we are cultivating: awake, balanced, and at ease. Next, consider the time and place for your practice. In the beginning, it is far more beneficial to practice for a short duration consistently than to attempt a long session infrequently and then give up in frustration. Start with just 5 or 10 minutes a day. Find a time when you are least likely to be disturbed. For many, this is early in the morning, before the day's activities begin to fill the mind. If possible, find a quiet corner in your home that you can dedicate to your practice. Having a specific spot can help to create a sense of ritual and signal to your mind that this is a special time for inner work. As your practice develops, you may find yourself naturally wanting to extend the time, but the key is consistency. A few minutes every single day is more powerful than an hour once a week. Most important of all is the attitude you bring to the cushion. The quality of your attention is more significant than the duration of your sit. The attitude should be one of profound patience and gentle, non-judgmental acceptance. This cannot be overstated. You are learning a new skill, and like any new skill, it requires practice and kindness. There will be days when your mind feels calm and focused, and there will be days when it feels like a raging storm. The instruction is to meet both experiences with the same unwavering equanimity. When you notice your mind has wandered for the 100th time, the instruction is not to criticize yourself, but to smile gently at the antics of your mind. And with the loving kindness you might offer to a small child, simply guide your attention back to the breath. This is what is meant by gentle discipline. The discipline is in the commitment to sit every day. The gentleness is in how you treat yourself during the practice. As you sit, you will inevitably encounter what are known as the common obstacles or hindrances. It is essential to see these not as problems or failures, but as the very subject of your meditation. They are opportunities to practice. The first and most common is the wandering mind, or restlessness. Your mind will jump from thoughts of the past to plans for the future, to random fantasies and arguments. This is normal. The practice is simply to notice it, perhaps with a soft label of thinking, and then gently, without force, return to the breath. The moment you realize you have been thinking is a moment of pure mindfulness. Celebrate it. The second obstacle is sleepiness or dullness. You may find your head nodding or your mind drifting into a foggy, dreamlike state. When this happens, you can bring more energy to your posture, straightening your spine. You can pay closer attention to the raw sensations of the breath, making your focus more precise. You can even open your eyes for a time if they were closed. If the sleepiness is overwhelming, it may be a sign that you are genuinely tired and need rest. But often, it is a subtle form of resistance from the mind, and bringing a brighter, more curious attention to it can help it to dissipate. A third obstacle many people face is physical pain or discomfort. It could be an aching back or knees that begin to throb. The first step is to use wise discernment. If the pain is sharp and signals a potential injury, you should mindfully and slowly adjust your posture. However, if it is the more common discomfort of sitting still, you can use it as a powerful object for Vipassana practice. Instead of resisting the sensation or getting lost in the story of my aching knee, you can turn your attention directly toward it. Where does the sensation begin and end? Is it hot or cold or tingling or throbbing? Is it a solid, unchanging block of pain, or is it a dynamic, fizzing field of sensations? By investigating it with this kind of bare, curious attention, our relationship to the pain often changes dramatically. The suffering we create around the pain, the resistance, the fear, the story begins to dissolve, even if the raw sensation remains. The story is told of a man who comes to a Zen master with a jar of muddy water. He says, "Master, my mind is like this water. It is turbulent and cloudy. I cannot find peace. How can I make it clear?" The master looks at the jar and then at the man and says nothing. He simply takes the jar and places it on a shelf in the corner of the room. The man waits, expecting some profound instruction, a special technique. But the master goes about his day. The man becomes impatient. After an hour, he says, "Master, what about my water?" The master calmly leads him over to the shelf. The jar has been sitting, undisturbed. The mud has slowly, naturally, settled to the bottom. The water at the top is now perfectly clear. The master says, "You did not need to do anything to the water. You only needed to stop shaking it." Our meditation practice is this simple, profound act of setting the jar down. We don't need to force our minds to be quiet. We need to create the conditions of stillness and non-interference and allow our own innate clarity to reveal itself. Meditation, then, is our laboratory. It is the dedicated time we take to study the workings of our own body, heart, and mind. It is a practice of being with ourselves exactly as we are, without needing anything to be different. We sit through the boredom, the restlessness, the joy, the pain, learning to meet it all with a balanced and compassionate presence. This consistent practice of sitting and observing makes us intimately familiar with the powerful emotional energies that flow through us. We see anger arise, we see fear arise, we see sadness arise. And with the stability and clarity we have cultivated, we are now in a position not just to observe these emotions, but to learn how to actively work with them, to engage them with wisdom, and to transform them from sources of suffering into opportunities for deep healing and growth. Through the dedicated practice of meditation, we create a quiet, stable space within ourselves. We learn to sit still and observe the ceaseless flow of our inner world. And in this newfound stillness, we inevitably come face to face with the raw power of our own emotions. We see waves of anger, fear, jealousy, and sadness rising from the depths, and our habitual reaction is often one of alarm. For most of our lives, we have been taught to relate to these so-called negative emotions in one of three unskillful ways. The first is suppression. We tell ourselves, "I shouldn't feel this way. This is a bad emotion," and we try to push it down, to deny its existence, creating a tense and conflicted inner world. The second is unrestrained expression. We are hijacked by the emotion and we act it out, lashing out in anger or collapsing in despair, often causing harm to ourselves and others. The third is distraction. We feel the discomfort of the emotion and immediately reach for something to numb it: food, alcohol, endless work, or the digital oblivion of a screen. The path of mindfulness offers a fourth way, a middle path that is both courageous and profoundly healing. It is the path of turning towards our emotions, not to fight them or to be consumed by them, but to embrace them with a compassionate and discerning awareness. It is learning to be the calm, unwavering eye in the center of our own emotional storm. The first and most radical step in this practice is to completely reframe our understanding of what an emotion is. We are conditioned to label certain emotions as negative and others as positive. But in the light of mindfulness, we see that emotions themselves are not inherently good or bad. They are simply energy. They are information. They are messengers from the deepest parts of our being, carrying vital news about our inner state and our unmet needs. Anger, for example, is not your enemy. It is often a messenger of justice, an alarm bell that tells you a boundary has been violated, either your own or someone else's. Acid, fear, is not a weakness. It is a messenger of intelligence, a primal signal designed to protect you from perceived harm. Sadness is not a pathology. It is a messenger of love, a testament to the value of what has been lost or what you cherish. When we label these messengers as bad or negative, we essentially shoot the messenger before we have even had a chance to read the message. This initial act of judgment creates a second layer of suffering. Not only do we feel anger, but we now also feel guilty or ashamed about feeling angry. The practice of mindful engagement begins by dropping this judgment. We cease our internal war and instead cultivate an attitude of respectful curiosity. We learn to welcome these messengers, even the ones that arrive with a loud and unsettling knock on our door. When a strong emotion arises, our first step is to simply recognize its presence. This is a practice of pure acknowledgement. Instead of being immediately swept away by the storyline of the emotion, we pause. We take a mental step back and say, "Ah, this is anger," or "I see that fear has come to visit." This simple act of recognition is incredibly powerful. It interrupts our habitual, unconscious reactivity and creates a moment of clarity. It is the difference between being lost in a fog and suddenly realizing, "I am in a fog." In that moment of realization, you are no longer completely identified with the fog. You are the one who is aware of it. We can even learn to greet our emotions with a sense of gentle friendship, a practice taught with great beauty by the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. We can say, internally, "Hello, my anger. I know you are there. I will take good care of you." This may feel strange or even artificial at first, but it is a revolutionary act of self-compassion. You are signaling to yourself that all parts of your experience are welcome, that nothing needs to be exiled. You are ending the internal war and calling a truce. Once we have recognized and acknowledged the emotion, the next step is to embrace it with our mindful attention. This is not a mental process, but a deeply embodied one. We use our breath as the very instrument of this embrace. We gently guide our attention out of the swirling stories in our head and into the direct, physical sensations of the emotion in our body. We ask ourselves with genuine curiosity, where does this emotion live inside of me? Anger might feel like a heat in the chest, a tightness in the jaw, a surge of energy in the arms. Fear might feel like a cold knot in the stomach, a constriction in the throat, a trembling in the hands. Sadness might feel like a heavy weight on the shoulders or an emptiness in the heart. Whatever the sensations are, our job is not to analyze them or get rid of them, but to simply be with them. We breathe with them. On the in-breath, we can silently acknowledge the feeling Breathing in, I feel the tightness in my chest. On the out-breath, we can gently soften around the sensation. Breathing out, I am releasing the tension around this feeling. We are not trying to breathe the feeling away. We are using our breath to create a space of compassionate awareness around the feeling, holding it as a mother would hold a crying child. We are giving it permission to be there, and in doing so, we give it the space it needs to transform on its own. This practice of mindful investigation allows us to metabolize the raw energy of the emotion. When an emotion is suppressed, its energy gets stuck in the body, creating tension and dis-ease. When it is acted out blindly, its energy explodes, causing harm. But when it is held in the spacious container of our mindful awareness, its energy can flow and resolve itself. Through this process of staying present with the physical sensations, we also begin to see its impermanent nature directly. We notice that the solid knot of anxiety is actually a shifting, vibrating field of energy. The unbearable heat of anger crests like a wave and then begins to subside. By staying with the raw data of the emotion, we unhook ourselves from the terrifying stories our mind tells about it. We see that the feeling is just a temporary visitor, not the owner of the house. This non-identification is the key to liberation. The emotion is happening, but it is not who we are. There is a beautiful parable that perfectly encapsulates this entire practice. Imagine a loving mother at home with her newborn baby. The baby begins to cry. What is the mother's response? A good mother does not ignore the baby. She does not put her hands over her ears and wish the crying would stop. She does not become angry at the baby for crying, and she certainly does not throw the baby out of the house. Her immediate action is to go to the baby, pick it up, and hold it tenderly in her arms. This act of embracing the baby is the first and most important step. Her compassionate presence begins to calm the baby. Once the baby is held and feels safe, the mother can then look more deeply to understand the cause of its distress. Is the baby hungry? Is it cold? Does it have a dirty diaper? Is it frightened? By holding the baby with love, she is able to understand its needs and respond with wisdom. Our difficult emotions are like our crying babies. Our mindfulness is the loving mother. When anger, fear, or sadness begins to cry within us, our practice is not to ignore it or push it away. Our practice is to pick it up, to hold it with the tenderness of our mindful breath, and to embrace it with unconditional acceptance. Once we have calmed it with our presence, we can then look deeply to hear its message and understand what it needs. Learning to work with our emotions in this way is a profound act of healing. It is the process of becoming our own best friend, our own loving parent. We learn that we do not need to be afraid of our own inner world. We discover that we possess the capacity to generate enough mindfulness and compassion to hold even the most intense storms. We become a sanctuary for ourselves. This intimate practice of turning towards our own suffering and meeting it with care and understanding does something remarkable. It sensitizes our heart. As we come to understand the nature of our own pain, our own fear, our own sorrow, we naturally develop a deeper capacity to understand and connect with the pain, fear, and sorrow of others. We see that the anger in another person likely comes from their own unhealed hurt. We see that their fear is a reflection of our own. This deep internal work of transforming our own suffering is the fertile soil from which a genuine and powerful compassion can grow, a compassion that begins with ourselves and then naturally extends outward to embrace the entire world. Having learned to stand with courage in the center of our own emotional storms, holding our pain with the gentle energy of mindfulness, we arrive at the next essential stage of our journey. It is a movement from passive acceptance to active cultivation. It is the practice of not just clearing the weeds of our suffering, but of intentionally planting and watering the seeds of joy, peace, and love within ourselves. This is the practice of metta, an ancient Pali word that translates as loving kindness, friendliness, or benevolence. It is a practice of generating a boundless, unconditional warmth, and it begins in the last place many of us are taught to look, with ourselves. For many in the modern world, the idea of self-love or self-compassion can feel uncomfortable, tinged with accusations of selfishness, narcissism, or self-indulgence. We are often taught that to be a good person is to be self-sacrificing, to put others first, to be hard on ourselves in the name of improvement. But the wisdom of this path reveals a profound truth. A genuine and sustainable compassion for others is impossible without first developing a foundation of compassion for oneself. To try and love others without first loving ourselves is to try and build a house on a foundation of sand. To understand the necessity of this practice, we must first become intimately aware of the voice that so often dominates our inner world, the voice of the inner critic. For countless people, this is the most persistent and painful source of dukkha in their lives. It is a relentless narrator, a harsh judge who sits in the mind and offers a running commentary of our perceived flaws and failures. It is the voice that whispers, "You're not smart enough," after a mistake at work. It is the voice that shouts, "You're so lazy," when we feel the need for rest. It is the voice that concludes, "You are unlovable," after a painful rejection. This inner critic is a cruel master, and living under its tyranny is a state of constant, low-grade warfare against ourselves. We would never dream of speaking to a friend, or even a stranger, with the same level of harshness that we so readily inflict upon ourselves. This voice is often an echo of past hurts, an internalization of critical parents, demanding teachers, or a society that constantly tells us we are not enough. It is a misguided, primitive attempt by our own minds to protect us, to whip us into shape so that we might avoid future pain or rejection. But its strategy is flawed. Trying to motivate yourself with criticism is like trying to train a puppy by beating it. All you create is a creature that is fearful, anxious, and broken. The only force that can truly heal these inner wounds and create the safety required for genuine growth is the gentle, unwavering force of kindness. It is crucial here to distinguish between true self-compassion and what is often mistaken for it, self-indulgence. Self-indulgence is typically a reactive, short-term strategy to escape discomfort. It is the voice of vibhava tanha, the craving for the non-existence of pain. After a difficult day, self-indulgence says, "I deserve to eat this entire pint of ice cream and watch mindless television for 5 hours to forget everything." While this may provide a momentary distraction, it often leaves us feeling worse in the long run. Self-compassion, on the other hand, is rooted in a genuine desire for our long-term health and well-being. It is a wiser, more caring voice. After a difficult day, self-compassion asks a different question. What do I truly need right now to be well? The answer might be to take a quiet walk in nature, to call a supportive friend, to take a warm bath, to practice meditation, or simply to get a good night's sleep. Self-compassion is not about avoiding our pain, but about caring for ourselves within our pain. It is the practice of becoming a wise and loving parent to our own inner child. The formal cultivation of this quality is known as metta bhavana, or loving kindness meditation. The practice is simple in its form, yet its effects can be profoundly transformative. It involves the silent repetition of a few key phrases, directed as heartfelt wishes towards ourselves. To begin, Find a comfortable meditation posture, just as you would for mindfulness of breath. Take a few moments to settle, to feel your body, to connect with the gentle rhythm of your breathing. Then, see if you can generate a feeling of warmth or simple friendliness in the center of your chest, in your heart area. For many, directing this feeling towards themselves immediately is very difficult. So, it can be helpful to start with an easier object. You might bring to mind a beloved pet, a small child, or even a dear friend or mentor for whom you feel an uncomplicated sense of love and goodwill. Picture them in your mind's eye and feel the natural warmth that arises. Once you can feel a glimmer of this kind energy, you then gently try to turn that same warmth back toward yourself. Then, you begin the silent repetition of the phrases. These are not affirmations that you are trying to force yourself to believe. They are offerings, they are wishes, they are seeds you are planting in the soil of your heart. The traditional phrases are, may I be safe, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I live with ease. Let us look at each one. May I be safe. This is a wish for safety from both outer and inner harm. It is a wish to be safe from danger in the world, but also to be safe from the harshness of our own inner critic, to be a safe place for ourselves. May I be happy. This is not a wish for fleeting, hedonistic pleasure, but for a deep, authentic, and lasting happiness that comes from a heart at peace. It is the wish for the joy that arises from a mind free from confusion and ill will. May I be healthy. This is a wish for health in the fullest sense of the word. Health in the body, so that it may be strong and carry us through life. Health in the mind, so that it may be clear and bright. And health in the heart, so that it may be open and resilient. May I live with ease. This is a wish to be free from the heavy burden of struggle and anxiety. It is a wish to move through the world with a sense of grace, balance, and peace, able to meet life's challenges without being overwhelmed by them. You repeat these phrases silently, slowly, allowing their meaning to resonate in your heart. It is very important to acknowledge that this practice can be incredibly challenging. When you begin to offer yourself these wishes, you may be met with a wall of resistance. A voice might say, "You don't deserve this," or "This is a lie." You might feel nothing at all, or even feel sadness or anger. This is all part of the process. This resistance is the very part of you that is most wounded and in need of this kindness. When this happens, the instruction is simply to be gentle. Acknowledge the resistance, acknowledge the pain, and continue to repeat the phrases softly in the background, like a gentle rain falling on hard, dry ground. The intention is what matters most. For many, this practice is a long, slow process of thawing a heart that has been frozen for a very long time. There is a simple, modern parable that captures the wisdom of this practice perfectly. On every commercial flight, during the safety briefing, the flight attendants give a crucial instruction. They say that in the event of a drop in cabin pressure, oxygen masks will fall from the ceiling. They then say, "Please place the mask over your own mouth and nose before assisting others." They even specify, "before assisting your own child." Why is this? It is not because you are selfish. It is because if you run out of oxygen and pass out, you will be of no use to your child or anyone else. Your ability to help others is directly dependent on your own well-being. This is not selfishness. It is wisdom. So it is with compassion. We cannot pour from an empty cup. We cannot offer a genuine, sustainable kindness to the world if our own inner well is dry. We cannot be a sanctuary for others if we are at war with ourselves. The practice of metta for oneself is the act of putting on our own oxygen mask first. It is the act of filling our own cup so that it may naturally overflow with kindness for others. Learning to be a true friend to yourself is one of the greatest gifts you can ever give. It heals the fundamental wound of self-rejection that lies at the root of so much of our anxiety and depression. It creates an inner resource of warmth and resilience that allows us to navigate life's inevitable difficulties with far greater grace. And once we have established this foundation of kindness for ourselves, once we have discovered this inexhaustible wellspring of metta within our own heart, we find that its supply is not limited. The more we offer this loving kindness to ourselves, the more we find we have to give. The circle of our compassion begins to feel constricting, and it naturally seeks to expand, to move beyond our own heart, and to embrace the lives of others. This is the beautiful, natural unfolding of the compassionate heart. Having discovered the wellspring of loving kindness within our own heart, having learned to offer ourselves the same gentle care we would offer to a dear friend, we now stand at a beautiful turning point. We begin to realize that this warmth, this compassion, is not a finite resource that gets depleted. In fact, the more we offer it to ourselves, the more it seems to grow. It is like a light that, once lit, naturally seeks to illuminate everything around it. The practice of metta, or loving kindness, does not end with ourselves. It begins there. Now, we learn to open the doors and windows of our heart, allowing this gentle light to radiate outwards, to touch the lives of others, and ultimately, to embrace the entire world. This is the practice of widening the circle of compassion, a joyful and transformative process that dissolves the artificial walls of separation between self and other. Before we begin this outward journey, it is helpful to understand the two primary qualities of the awakened heart. The first is metta, the loving kindness we have been cultivating. Think of metta as the sun. It is a warm, radiant, and proactive energy. It is the sincere wish for all beings to be happy and to have the causes of true happiness. It shines its goodwill on everyone and everything without discrimination, simply wishing for their well-being. The second quality is karuna, which is often translated as compassion. If metta is the sun, karuna is the moon. It is a tender, responsive energy that arises when we come into contact with suffering. It is the trembling of the heart in the face of pain and the sincere wish for all beings to be free from their suffering and the causes of suffering. While metta proactively wishes for happiness, karuna responsively wishes for the end of pain. A complete and balanced heart needs both these qualities, the radiant warmth of the sun and the tender light of the moon. As we extend our practice outwards, we are cultivating both, weaving them together into a powerful force for healing, both for ourselves and for the world. The practice of extending compassion follows a traditional, systematic path, moving outwards in stages from the easiest objects to the most challenging. This allows us to build momentum and strengthen our compassionate muscle gradually. After finding a comfortable posture and generating a feeling of metta for ourselves, we begin the first outward stage. We bring to mind a benefactor. This is a person for whom we feel natural gratitude, respect, and appreciation. It could be a teacher, a mentor, a grandparent, or anyone who has shown us kindness and guidance in our lives. We bring their image to mind, perhaps picturing them smiling, and we allow our feelings of gratitude and warmth to arise. Then, we extend the phrases of loving kindness towards them. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. We truly wish for their well-being, sending them this energy of heartfelt care, thanking them for the goodness they have brought into our life. Next, we move to a dear friend. We bring to mind a close friend, someone we love and trust. We picture them and all their wonderful qualities, and we extend the same wishes for their happiness and freedom from suffering. We let our heart connect with theirs, bathing them in the warmth of our goodwill. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. This stage is usually also quite joyful and helps to strengthen the flow of our metta. The third stage is a crucial and transformative step. We bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone we encounter in our daily lives, but for whom we have no strong feelings, positive or negative. It could be the cashier at the grocery store, the mail carrier, a person we see on our daily commute. We often move through our day seeing such people as mere functions, not as full human beings. This practice challenges that habit of indifference. We bring this neutral person to mind, and we recognize a profound truth. Just like me, this person wants to be happy. Just like me, this person wants to be free from suffering. They have their own hopes, their own fears, their own secret sorrows, and private joys. In our shared humanity, we are the same. And with this recognition, we extend our heartfelt wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. This practice begins to break down the walls of our indifference and helps us to see the whole world as being populated by people who are just like us. The fourth stage is the most challenging, and for that reason, the most powerful. We bring to mind a difficult person. It is wise to begin with someone who is only mildly irritating or difficult, not someone who has been the source of deep trauma. This practice is not about condoning harmful actions or forcing a false reconciliation. It is a practice for our own heart, a way to free ourselves from the prison of resentment, anger, and hatred. We bring this person to mind, and we acknowledge the pain or difficulty they have caused. We do not deny it. But then, we practice looking deeper. We try to see that this person's harmful actions almost certainly spring from their own deep suffering, their own confusion, their own fear. Hurt people. We recognize that their mind is likely filled with the poisons of anger and ignorance, and that this is a state of profound dukkha. And from this place of deeper understanding, we try to offer them a wish for healing. We wish for them to be free from the very suffering that causes them to act in harmful ways. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be free from the anger and pain that cause you to harm others. May you find peace. This is a radical act of compassion. It may feel impossible at first, but even the slightest intention in this direction can begin to loosen the grip of our own bitterness and allow our heart to find its own freedom. Finally, we expand the circle to its widest possible dimension. We extend our loving kindness to all beings, everywhere, without exception. We bring to mind friends, enemies, and neutral people. We extend our wishes to people in our city, our country, and all around the world. We extend our compassion to animals, to all living creatures, great and small. We radiate this energy of metta in all directions, north, south, east, and west, above and below. May all beings be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings live with ease. In this moment, we dissolve all boundaries and allow our heart to become as boundless as space itself, offering its unconditional love to the entire interconnected web of life. The story of the Buddha and his cousin, Devadatta, serves as the ultimate illustration of this boundless compassion. Devadatta was consumed by jealousy and ambition, and he tried multiple times to murder the Buddha to take his place. He rolled a giant boulder down a mountain to crush him. He sent a raging, intoxicated elephant to trample him. He created schisms in the monastic community. Yet, throughout all of this, the Buddha never showed a flicker of hatred or fear towards Devadatta. He always regarded his cousin with a heart of profound karuna, or compassion, He saw Devadatta not as an evil monster, but as a man who was deeply tormented, a man trapped and burning in the fires of his own greed, hatred, and delusion. The Buddha's compassion was directed at the source of the behavior, the suffering itself. This demonstrates the pinnacle of this practice, a compassion so vast and clear-sighted that it can look upon one who wishes to cause harm and see only a being who is in desperate need of healing. Cultivating this expansive heart is the perfect antidote to the feelings of isolation and alienation that plague our modern society. It replaces our habit of judgment with a habit of understanding. It allows us to see the common humanity that connects us all beneath our superficial differences. It is the heart's direct and living response to the wisdom of anatta, or not self. If there is no solid, separate self, then the well-being of others is not separate from our own. Their happiness contributes to our happiness, and their suffering diminishes us all. But this beautiful feeling, this expansive compassion cultivated on the meditation cushion, is not meant to remain a private, internal experience. It demands expression. It must be brought down from the cushion and woven into the fabric of our daily lives. And the first, most immediate, and most powerful way we bring our compassion into the world is through the way we communicate, through the words we choose to speak, and through the way we listen to others. Having cultivated a heart of boundless compassion, a warmth that embraces both ourselves and all other beings, we are now faced with a vital question. How do we allow this inner transformation to manifest in the world? A heart filled with metta is a beautiful start, but it is incomplete if it remains a secret, private experience. The compassionate heart yearns for expression, for connection, for action, and the most common, powerful, and immediate way that we interact with the world is through our speech. Our words are incredible tools. With a single sentence, we can build a bridge of understanding, heal a hidden wound, or inspire a person to greatness. With that same sentence, we can also erect a wall of separation, inflict a deep injury, or crush a person's spirit. Our words create worlds. The practice of bringing our cultivated compassion into our communication is known as samaveka, or right speech. This is not a rigid set of grammatical rules, but a living, mindful practice of using our words to reduce suffering and create more harmony and happiness in the world. The wisdom of this path suggests that before we speak, we should let our intended words pass through 4 gentle gates of inquiry. The first gate is it true? This is the foundation of all trustworthy communication. It means abstaining from falsehood, from outright lies, from deception, and from exaggeration. It is a commitment to representing reality as accurately as we can. But this goes deeper than simply not telling lies. It is also about being true to ourselves, speaking with an authenticity that aligns our inner values with our outer expression. It is about having the integrity to say, "I don't know," rather than pretending to have an answer. Without this foundation of truthfulness, no real connection or trust can ever be built. If our words pass through the first gate, they arrive at the second. Is it kind? This gate filters out harsh speech. This includes obvious verbal violence like yelling, insulting, or name-calling. But it also includes the more subtle forms of harshness, like biting sarcasm, mockery, or backhanded compliments. A statement can be 100% true, but if it is spoken with a cruel intention or a tone designed to wound, it is not right speech. It is simply violence, delivered through sound waves. Practicing with this gate means becoming sensitive to the emotional impact of our words. It means learning to speak to others, even when we disagree with them, with the same respect and gentleness that we would hope to receive. It is the recognition that every person we speak to has a tender heart and is deserving of kindness. Having passed through the gates of truth and kindness, our words arrive at the third gate. Is it useful and necessary? This gate is a powerful antidote to a very modern affliction, the endless stream of meaningless chatter. This is the practice of abstaining from idle gossip, from complaining simply for the sake of reinforcing our own negativity, and from filling every moment of silence with noise. Gossip poisons our relationships, creating mistrust and hurting people who are not present to defend themselves. Chronic complaining reinforces our own sense of victimhood and spreads a cloud of negativity. Idle chatter simply clutters the mind and prevents the possibility of a deeper, more meaningful connection. This gate invites us to value the power of our words and to use them with intention. It also invites us to discover the profound beauty and intimacy of shared silence. Sometimes, the most connecting thing we can do with another person is to simply be with them in quiet presence. If our words are true, kind, and useful, they arrive at the final gate. Does it promote harmony? This is the practice of abstaining from divisive speech. This includes slander, spreading rumors, or saying things that are intended to set one person or group against another. It is a commitment to use our words not as weapons to divide, but as tools to build bridges. It flows directly from our practice of metta and our understanding of interconnectedness. When we truly feel that the happiness of others is related to our own, the last thing we want to do is create conflict and separation. This gate encourages us to speak in ways that highlight our shared humanity, that foster understanding, and that help to heal the divisions in our families, our workplaces, and our communities. Right speech, however, is only one half of compassionate communication. The other, equally important half, is the practice of deep listening. In a world where everyone is waiting for their turn to talk, to offer their opinion, to tell their own story, the act of truly listening to another person is one of the most precious and healing gifts we can offer. Most of our listening is not deep. We are listening in order to reply, to rebut, to analyze, to judge, or to fix. Our mind is busy formulating our response while the other person is still speaking. Deep listening, or karuna sravana as it is called, has only one purpose: to give the other person the space to be heard, and, in doing so, to help them suffer less. To practice deep listening, we set aside our own agenda. We put down our own internal chatter and offer our full, undivided presence. We listen with our ears, but also with our eyes and our heart. We notice their body language, their tone of voice. We listen for the feelings that lie beneath their words. We resist the powerful urge to interrupt, to give advice, or to say, "Oh, that reminds me of a time when." We trust that simply by being heard in a safe, non-judgmental space, the other person will begin to hear themselves more clearly and discover their own wisdom. This quality of listening is a powerful form of meditation. It requires us to be fully present, to set aside our own ego, and to open our heart to the experience of another. Of course, life will present us with situations where we must speak a difficult truth. Right speech does not mean becoming a passive person who avoids all conflict. It means learning to speak the truth with skill and compassion. This is where we bring all four gates together. We know our words must be true, but we take the time to find the kindest, most gentle way to express that truth. We check our motivation to ensure that our intention is to be helpful and to preserve the relationship, not simply to be right or to win an argument. And we choose the right time and place for the conversation, a setting that is private and calm. This is the art of speaking from a place of clarity and courage, while never losing contact with our compassionate heart. There is a story of a young, earnest student who was constantly agitated and frustrated with his practice. One day, he went to his Zen master, and the words just came pouring out of him. He complained about the other monks, about the boring food, about his inability to concentrate, about the pain in his knees. The master sat perfectly still, pouring tea for the student, and listened. He did not interrupt. He did not offer any advice. He simply listened with a calm, spacious, unwavering attention. His presence was like a great, silent mountain. The student talked and talked, and as the minutes passed, his voice began to soften. In the process of being so deeply heard, he began to hear himself. He saw the patterns of his own complaining mind. He saw his own impatience. When he finally ran out of words, a deep silence filled the room. The student felt a profound sense of relief and clarity he hadn't felt in months. He bowed deeply to the master. "Thank you," he said, "for your incredible teaching. You have helped me so much." The master simply smiled and replied, "I am glad that my listening was a help to you." This is the power of compassionate presence. Often, the kindest words are no words at all. Our speech is the bridge between our inner world and the outer world. It is where our practice becomes tangible, where our compassion becomes a living force that can soothe, heal, and connect. By practicing right speech and deep listening, we are weaving our meditation into the very fabric of our relationships. We are learning to make every conversation an opportunity for mindfulness and love. And this same principle of mindful, compassionate engagement does not end with our words. It naturally extends to all our actions, transforming the way we work, the way we eat, and the way we move through our day. The peace we cultivate on the meditation cushion is precious, but its true value is realized only when we learn to carry it with us into the chaotic, beautiful, and demanding world of our daily lives. For many of us, there is a frustrating gap between the calm clarity we experience in our formal sitting practice and the reactive, distracted state we fall into the moment we stand up. We step off the cushion and right back onto the treadmill of habitual thought and action. The great secret of a living Zen practice is the art of bridging this gap. It is the understanding that the goal is not to create a temporary sanctuary from life, but to transform our entire life into a sanctuary. Enlightenment is not a future destination to be reached after decades of sitting in a cave. It is a quality of presence that can be discovered right here, right now, in the most ordinary of moments. The practice is to infuse every step, every bite, every simple task with the same quality of mindful, compassionate attention that we cultivate in our formal meditation. Let us begin with the most fundamental of human actions, walking. For most of us, walking is a purely utilitarian act. We walk to get from the bedroom to the kitchen, from the house to the car, from the office to the meeting room. Our body is moving, but our mind is almost always somewhere else. We are planning, worrying, rehearsing conversations, lost in the labyrinth of our thoughts. We are completely absent from the actual experience of walking. Mindful walking, or kinhin, as it is known in the Zen tradition, invites us to a radically different experience. It is the practice of walking not to arrive somewhere else, but to be fully present with each step. You can practice this formally by finding a clear path, perhaps 20 or 30 feet long, either indoors or outdoors. Stand at one end of the path for a moment. Feel your feet firmly planted on the ground. Feel the weight of your body, the posture of your spine. Become aware of your breathing. Then begin to walk, but much more slowly than you normally would. As you walk, bring your full attention to the sensations in your feet and legs. Feel the sensation of lifting one foot off the ground. Feel the leg swinging through the air. Feel the heel making contact with the earth. then the ball of the foot, then the toes. Feel the shift in weight as the other foot lifts. You can coordinate your breath with your steps, perhaps taking one step for each in-breath and one for each out-breath. There is nowhere to go, nothing to achieve. The destination is the step itself. Each step is a miracle. Each step is an opportunity to touch the earth with your full presence. When you reach the end of your path, you can pause, turn, and begin again. Practicing in this formal way, even for just 10 minutes, can profoundly calm the body and mind. But the true power of this practice comes when you bring it into your everyday life. You don't need a special path or a slow, deliberate pace. As you walk from your car to your office door, you can take just 3 mindful steps. For those 3 steps, you can simply feel the contact of your shoes on the pavement. Feel the movement in your legs. As you walk to the kitchen to get a glass of water, you can feel your feet on the floor. These small moments of embodied presence become anchors that pull you out of the storm of your thoughts and back into the reality of the present moment. You learn to arrive with each step, transforming the simple act of walking into a continuous practice of peace. Let us now turn to another activity we perform every day: eating. Just as with walking, our eating is often a completely mindless activity. We eat while watching television, while scrolling on our phones, while driving, while working. We shovel food into our mouths, barely tasting it, completely disconnected from the process of nourishment and from the signals of our own body. Mindful eating is a practice of bringing reverence, gratitude, and full attention to this vital act. You can begin by practicing with just the first few bites of your next meal. Before you pick up your fork, take a moment to simply pause and look at the food on your plate. Contemplate where it came from. This piece of bread, for example, contains the sunshine that warmed the wheat, the clouds that brought the rain, the richness of the soil, the labor of the farmer who planted the seeds, the work of the baker who baked the loaf, and the effort of the person who brought it to your table. In this one piece of bread, the entire universe is present. This contemplation alone begins to foster a deep sense of gratitude and connection. Then, engage all of your senses. Notice the colors, the shapes, and the textures on your plate. Bring the food towards you and notice its aroma. When you take the first bite, do so with conscious intention. And after that first bite, try putting your fork down. Simply chew. Chew slowly, 30 or 40 times. Our stomachs do not have teeth. Chewing slowly is an act of kindness to our digestive system. But more than that, it allows us to truly taste our food. You may be amazed at the explosion of flavors and textures you have been missing your entire life. Notice the experience. Is it pleasant? Is it satisfying? Pay attention to your body. Listen for its subtle signals of hunger and fullness. By eating mindfully, we not only enjoy our food more, but we also naturally begin to eat more healthily. We become more aware of what our body truly needs, rather than what our restless mind craves. We transform the mechanical act of refueling into a rich and joyful meditation, a celebration of our interconnection with the earth. This same principle of mindful engagement can be applied to any task, especially the mundane chores we tend to resent and rush through. A Zen master once said, "When you wash the dishes, you should only be washing the dishes." This means that, while you are at the sink, you are not mentally rehearsing an argument or planning your next day. You are fully present with the act of washing. You feel the warmth of the water on your hands. You feel the smooth, slippery texture of the soap. You notice the shape and weight of the plate in your hands. You hear the sound of the water and the gentle clinking of the dishes. Your task is not to get the dishes done, so you can move on to something more important. Your task, in that moment, is to be 100% alive while washing the dishes. When you approach a chore in this way, its character completely changes. It is no longer a burden to be endured, but an opportunity for calm, focused, and peaceful presence. You can fold laundry and feel the different textures of the fabrics. You can sweep the floor and be aware of the rhythmic motion of your body. You can brush your teeth and feel the sensation of the bristles on your gums. There are no mundane tasks. There is only a mindful or a mindless way of approaching them. Every moment of our day, no matter how ordinary, becomes an invitation to wake up. To help us remember to wake up in the midst of our busy lives, we can practice creating bells of mindfulness. In a monastery, a large bell is rung periodically throughout the day. When the monks hear the sound of the bell, they stop whatever they are doing, whether it is walking, working, or eating, and they simply take 3 conscious breaths. This bell is a reminder to come back home to the present moment. We can create our own bells of mindfulness using the sounds and events of our modern world. For example, you can decide that every time your phone rings, it will be your bell. Instead of immediately grabbing it with a sense of urgency, you can use the sound as a signal to pause, take 1 conscious in-breath and out-breath, and then answer the phone with a calmer, more present mind. A red light, while driving, can be another bell. Instead of feeling frustrated and impatient, you can use that minute of stillness as a gift, an opportunity to relax your grip on the steering wheel, release the tension in your shoulders, and notice your breathing. The sound of a siren, the whistle of a kettle, the chime of a new email-ny recurring sound or event can be transformed from a potential annoyance into a sacred call to return to yourself. By sprinkling these tiny moments of mindfulness throughout your day, you begin to weave a continuous thread of awareness that supports you, even when you are not on the meditation cushion. A well-known journalist once asked the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh how he managed to find time to meditate with his incredibly busy schedule of teaching, writing, and traveling for peace. The master smiled and replied gently, "I do not have to find time to meditate. When I walk, the walking itself is my meditation. When I eat, the eating is my meditation. When I answer the telephone, I am mindful of the person on the other end of the line. My practice is to live my entire day in a state of mindfulness." This is the profound invitation being offered to us. The goal is not to add another task to our already overwhelming to-do list. It is to transform the quality of everything we are already doing. It is to discover that the sacred is not separate from the ordinary. And as we begin to pay this close, loving attention to the simple acts of our lives, something extraordinary happens. We look at a simple cup of tea and we see the clouds, the rain, the tea pickers. We look at a piece of paper and we see the forest, the sun, the logger. We begin to see, in the most direct and visceral way, that nothing exists by itself. We see that every single thing is intimately connected to everything else. This direct seeing, born from our mindful presence in daily life, leads us to the doorstep of one of the deepest insights of this path, the truth of interbeing. As we learn to bring our full presence to the simple acts of our daily lives, a profound shift in perception begins to occur. When we truly look at a cup of tea, we see the journey of the leaves, the heat of the fire, the hands that crafted the cup. When we truly feel the texture of the bread we eat, we feel the warmth of the sun and the nourishment of the earth. We begin to move beyond a superficial view of the world as a collection of separate, solid objects and we start to glimpse a deeper, more vibrant reality. This is the gateway to one of the most profound and beautiful insights of the Zen path, a teaching known in ancient times as pratityasamutpada, or dependent origination, and known in our time by the beautiful term coined by Thich Nhat Hanh, interbeing. Interbeing is not a complex philosophy. It is a simple, factual description of reality. It states that nothing exists by itself, in isolation. Everything in the cosmos comes into being only in relationship to everything else. To be is to interbe. Let us explore this with a simple guided contemplation. Imagine in your mind's eye, or even hold in your hand, a single sheet of paper. We look at it, and we think of it as a single, separate thing. We call it paper. But let us look more deeply with the eyes of interbeing. Can you see the cloud in this sheet of paper? If you look, you will see it. Because without a cloud, there can be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow. And without trees, we cannot make paper. So the cloud is undeniably present in the paper. Now, look for the sunshine. The sun's energy is essential for the tree to grow through photosynthesis. Without the sun, the forest would not exist. So, the sunshine is also in the sheet of paper. If we continue to look, we can see the logger who cut down the tree. We can see his hands, his breath, the breakfast he ate that gave him the strength for his work. And in his breakfast, we see the wheat, which again contains the sun, the rain, and the earth. We see the logger's parents and their parents, stretching back through countless generations. All of them are present in this single sheet of paper. But it does not stop there. We can see the truck driver who transported the log to the mill. We see the person who designed the machinery, the one who operated it. We see the mind that invented the idea of paper itself. We can see the soil, the rich minerals that nourished the tree's roots. We can see time, the seasons, the years it took for the tree to grow. If we were to gently return any one of these elements to its source, if we were to give the sunshine back to the sun, the cloud back to the sky, the logger back to his parents, the soil back to the earth, the sheet of paper could not exist. It is composed entirely of what we might call non-paper elements. It has no separate, independent self. Its entire existence is a manifestation of interconnection, a temporary gathering point for the whole cosmos. This is the truth of interbeing. And what is true for this sheet of paper is true for everything else in the universe, including ourselves. Now, turn this same deep looking upon yourself. Look at your own hand. At first glance, it is just your hand, a separate part of your separate self. But can you see the sun in your hand? The warmth you feel is the energy of the sun, passed down through the food you have eaten. Can you see the cloud in your hand? Your body is more than 60% water, water that was once in a cloud, in a river, in the ocean. Can you see your parents and all your ancestors in your hand? Their DNA, their love, their struggles are all woven into the very fabric of your being. Look at the air you are breathing in this very moment. This invisible ocean of oxygen connects you directly to the trees and the plankton that produce it. You are breathing in the forest, and the forest is breathing you in. The boundary of your skin, which feels so solid and definite, is actually a porous membrane through which the entire universe flows. The food you eat becomes your cells. The air you breathe becomes your blood. The ideas you learn become your thoughts. You are not a separate drop of water, struggling alone. You are a wave on the surface of a single, unified ocean of existence. To see this truth directly is to shatter the fundamental illusion that causes so much of our suffering, the illusion of the separate self. It is this illusion that gives rise to the feeling of me versus the world. It creates loneliness, fear, competition, and greed. We feel isolated and vulnerable, a small self struggling against a vast and indifferent universe. The wisdom of interbeing heals this wound of separation. It reveals that there is no other. The person you see across from you is another manifestation of yourself. Their joy is your joy, and their suffering is your suffering. This is not a sentimental platitude. It is a description of reality. When we harm another person, verbally or physically, we are harming a part of our own larger body. When we pollute the river, we are polluting our own bloodstream. When we clear-cut the forest, we are destroying our own lungs. This deep understanding becomes the only true and lasting foundation for social responsibility and ecological consciousness. We no longer act to protect the environment because it is a good cause or a political position. We act to protect the environment because we realize that we are the environment. Our well-being is inextricably linked to the well-being of the air, the water, the soil, and all living creatures. Likewise, our compassion for others is no longer a moral duty, but a natural, spontaneous response. We help someone who is suffering for the same reason we would pull our own hand from a fire, because their pain is our pain. We see that the anger, violence, and greed in the world are not caused by evil people, but by the deep suffering and confusion that arises from the illusion of separation. And our response becomes not one of judgment, but of a deep desire to help heal the ignorance that causes such harm. There is a magnificent image from ancient Buddhist cosmology that perfectly captures this vision of reality. It is called Indra's net. Imagine a vast cosmic net that stretches to infinity in all directions. At every single node where the threads of the net cross, there hangs a single, perfectly clear, multifaceted jewel. The net is structured in such a way that if you look closely at the surface of any one jewel, you will see reflected in it every other jewel in the entire net. And within each of those reflections, you will see the reflections of all the other jewels, and so on, in an infinite regress of interconnection. Each jewel contains all the other jewels. When a single jewel is touched, every other jewel in the net trembles and shines with a new light. We are these jewels. Our lives are not separate, but are intimately woven together in this cosmic web. Every action we take, every word we speak, every thought we think, sends a vibration throughout the entire net, touching and affecting every other being. There are no insignificant actions. The insight of interbeing transforms our worldview from one of fragmentation and isolation to one of profound unity, intimacy, and belonging. It is a homecoming to the reality of our true nature. It calls us to live with a greater sense of reverence and care, aware that our lives are deeply intertwined with the lives of all. This profound awareness naturally leads us to question the way we live our lives. If we are truly interconnected with all beings and the planet itself, how can we live and work in a way that honors this truth? How can we earn our living and consume the Earth's resources in a way that reduces suffering and contributes to the well-being of the whole? This question guides us to the next step on our path, the exploration of right livelihood, the profound insight of interbeing, the visceral understanding that we are not separate from the world, but are deeply interwoven with it, is not meant to remain a beautiful, abstract idea. It is a truth that calls for a response. It demands that we look at the very structure of our lives and ask whether our actions are in harmony with this interconnected reality. Two of the most powerful and time-consuming activities that define our lives in the modern world are our work and our consumption. the way we earn our living, and the way we spend our resources are the primary channels through which we impact the great web of life. The practice of aligning these activities with our deepest values of wisdom and compassion is called sama ajiva, or right livelihood. It is the commitment to transform our economic life from a potential source of stress, harm, and confusion into a path of meaningful practice and service to the whole. For many of us, work is viewed primarily as a means to an end. It is the thing we must do to get a paycheck, to pay the bills, to acquire status, and to secure our future. We often separate our work life from our real life, enduring the former in order to enjoy the latter. But this separation creates a deep division within ourselves. As we spend the majority of our waking hours in an activity that may feel devoid of heart and meaning, right livelihood invites us to heal this division. It suggests that our work, whatever it may be, can become a rich and fertile ground for our spiritual practice. Our workplace can be our monastery. Our colleagues can be our teachers. Every challenging project is an opportunity to practice patience. Every difficult conversation is an opportunity to practice right speech and deep listening. Every customer or client is an opportunity to practice compassion. By bringing our full mindful presence to our work, we transform it from a mere transaction into a path of moment-to-moment awakening. Beyond simply being mindful within our job, the practice of right livelihood asks us to look deeply at the nature of the work itself. Traditionally, this meant abstaining from livelihoods that directly cause harm, such as those involving violence, deception, or the trade of intoxicants or weapons. In our complex modern world, this inquiry can be expanded. We can sit quietly and ask ourselves a series of honest questions about our work. Does my work contribute to the well-being of others, or does it prey upon their fears and cravings? A doctor who heals the sick is practicing right livelihood. A teacher who educates children is practicing right livelihood. An artist who creates beauty that uplifts the human spirit is practicing right livelihood. But what if our work is in an industry that profits from addiction, that fuels the engine of tanha by making people feel insecure and incomplete, so they will buy more products? What if our company's practices contribute to the destruction of the environment, which we now understand to be our own larger body? What if the culture of our workplace is toxic, encouraging burnout, dishonesty, and ruthless competition? These are not easy questions, and the answers are rarely simple. The practice of right livelihood is not a command to immediately quit any job that is not perfect. Such a job may not exist. Rather, it is an invitation to begin a process of conscious, compassionate inquiry. The first step is always awareness. We simply begin to see clearly, without judgment, the effects of our work. From this clarity, action can arise in many forms. It might be a small action, like choosing to bring more integrity and kindness to your specific role, refusing to participate in dishonest practices, or advocating for more sustainable policies within your company. It might mean finding ways to use the skills from your job to volunteer for a cause you believe in. Or, for some, over a period of time, this deep looking may indeed lead to a more radical change or shift in career toward work that feels more aligned with their heart, work that is a direct expression of their desire to serve and not to harm. The path is different for everyone, but it begins with the courage to ask the question, is my work an expression of my deepest wisdom or a contradiction of it? The other half of our economic life is consumption. We live in a society that is fundamentally built on the premise that happiness can be bought. We are bombarded with thousands of messages every day telling us that our lives are incomplete and that the missing piece can be found at the next store, on the next website. This culture of consumerism is a direct manifestation of tanha, the thirst that keeps us in a perpetual state of dissatisfaction. The practice of mindful consumption is a powerful antidote to this collective illness. It is the art of bringing awareness and intention to the way we acquire and use material things. This practice can begin with a simple, powerful action: the pause. Before you make a purchase, whether it is a new piece of clothing, a gadget, or even just a cup of coffee, take a moment to pause. Create a space between the impulse to buy and the action of buying. In that space, you can ask a few simple questions. The first is, do I truly need this, or do I just want it? Look deeply into the feeling behind the desire. Is it a genuine need, or is it an attempt to soothe a feeling of boredom, loneliness, sadness, or insecurity? Are you buying something, or are you trying to buy a feeling? Often, the simple act of recognizing the underlying emotion is enough to see that the purchase will not be a true solution. The second question flows from our understanding of interbeing. Where did this come from? Look at the object and try to see its entire history. See the raw materials extracted from the earth. See the energy used to produce and transport it. See the hands of the people who made it. Were they treated fairly? Were they paid a living wage? Or is this object the product of a system that causes suffering to other beings? The third question is, where is this going? What will happen to this object when I am finished with it? Can it be repaired? Can it be recycled? Or will it end up in a landfill, a burden on the earth for generations to come? This inquiry into the life cycle of our possessions connects us to the consequences of our actions and encourages us to choose items that are durable, sustainable, and created with care. This practice of mindful consumption does not lead to a life of grim, joyless austerity. On the contrary, it leads to a life of greater freedom and deeper joy. It is freedom from the exhausting treadmill of always wanting more. It is freedom from the anxiety and debt that so often accompany a life of mindless acquisition, and it cultivates a profound joy in simplicity. When we are not constantly chasing the next new thing, we can begin to truly appreciate and care for the things we already have. A simple meal becomes a feast. A well-made piece of clothing becomes a trusted friend. We discover that true wealth is not measured by the quantity of our possessions, but by the quality of our attention and the peace in our heart. This leads to the ultimate re-evaluation that right livelihood asks of us, the redefinition of wealth itself. Our society defines wealth in purely material terms, but we have all seen that this kind of wealth is impermanent and offers no real protection from the deeper sufferings of life. The wisdom of Zen proposes a different kind of wealth, an inner wealth. This is the wealth of contentment, the richness of a life that needs very little to be happy. It is the wealth of a mind that is calm and uncluttered, and a heart that is filled with compassion. It is the immeasurable treasure of being free from the burning thirst of tanha, which is the very source of our poverty of spirit. This is a wealth that cannot be bought or sold, that does not fluctuate with the stock market, and that no one can ever take away from you. There is a story of a woman who was one of the most brilliant and successful creative directors in the advertising world. She lived in a beautiful apartment in a major city, won prestigious awards, and was highly respected in her field. But privately, she felt a growing sense of emptiness and conflict. She recognized that her incredible talent for creativity was being used to make people feel inadequate, to manufacture desires for things they did not need, and to fuel the very engine of consumerism that was causing so much stress in society and so much damage to the planet. Her livelihood, though successful, was causing harm. After a long period of deep reflection and meditation, she made a courageous choice. She left her job, sold her apartment, and used her savings to buy a small plot of land in the countryside. She started a small organic farm, growing vegetables for her local community. Her former colleagues thought she had lost her mind, but for the first time in her adult life, she felt a sense of profound joy and purpose. Instead of creating illusions on a screen, she was nurturing life from the soil. Instead of working late under artificial lights, she was working with the natural rhythms of the sun and the seasons. Her income was a fraction of what it once was, but she felt immeasurably richer. She had aligned her outer life with her inner truth. She had found her right livelihood. This is the invitation for all of us, to look with courage and compassion at how we participate in the economic systems of our world, to make conscious choices, however small they may seem, that steer us toward healing and away from harm. As we begin to simplify our lives in this way, letting go of the compulsive need for more, we cultivate a deep sense of inner sufficiency. We become less dependent on external conditions for our happiness and our sense of security. This inner strength, this resilience born from simplicity and conscious living, is what prepares us to face one of life's most profound and unavoidable realities, the truth of loss. It equips us with the grace and wisdom to practice the essential art of letting go. Through the practice of right livelihood, we begin to simplify our outer world, aligning our actions with our deepest values and untangling ourselves from the ceaseless pursuit of more. This external simplification naturally invites an internal one. We begin to see how much energy we expend, not just in acquiring things, but in clinging to our possessions, our roles, our opinions, our plans, and even our own pain. This brings us to the essential and deeply healing practice of letting go. In a culture that glorifies achievement, control, and holding on, the art of letting go can sound like an act of failure or resignation. We may fear that if we let go, it means we don't care, or that we are becoming passive and detached. But from the perspective of Zen wisdom, letting go is one of the most courageous, active, and intelligent skills we can cultivate. It is the practical application of our understanding of anicca, impermanence. It is the wisdom of opening our hand and allowing the river of life to flow, rather than trying to clench our fist around it. It is not an act of giving up, but an act of giving in to the grace and flow of reality itself. It is absolutely crucial to understand the difference between true letting go and its counterfeit, which is suppression or spiritual bypassing. Suppression is an act of aversion, a form of violence against our own experience. It's when we feel a painful emotion like grief or anger, and we tell ourselves, "I need to let this go," which is really a coded message for, "I cannot handle the intensity of this feeling, so I will pretend it doesn't exist." We push the feeling down, we intellectualize it, we cover it with a veneer of forced positivity, but the energy of the emotion does not disappear. It remains trapped in the body, creating tension, anxiety, and a sense of being fundamentally at war with ourselves. True letting go is a much more courageous and compassionate process. It does not bypass the feeling. It moves directly through it. As we have learned, before we can let something go, we must first learn to hold it with mindful, loving attention. We must have the courage to acknowledge the pain, to allow the grief to be present, to feel the anger in our body without judgment. We embrace the emotion with the warmth of our breath and our presence. Only after a feeling has been fully seen, honored, and held can it be released. Letting go is the final, natural exhale after a deep, accepting inhale. You cannot release a breath. you were never willing to take in. Like any skill, the art of letting go is strengthened through consistent practice. While we will all face major losses in our lives, the training ground for this skill is found in the small, everyday moments of friction and attachment. Our daily life becomes our gymnasium for practicing non-clinging. We can start by practicing letting go of the need to be right in a conversation. When we feel that charge of our ego wanting to prove a point, we can consciously relax, open our ears, and let go of our attachment to our opinion, choosing connection over being correct. We can practice letting go of our expectations. We often carry around a detailed mental script for how our day should unfold, how our partner should behave, how our children should act. When reality inevitably deviates from our script, it causes us immense frustration. The practice is to notice this gap and to consciously let go of our pre-written story, allowing ourselves to be present with the reality of what is actually happening. We can practice with minor irritations. When someone cuts us off in traffic, we can notice the flash of anger, the tightening in our chest. We can acknowledge it, take a conscious breath, and then let it go, rather than carrying that angry energy with us for the next 10 miles. When we are standing in a long, slow line at the store, we can notice our impatience, our internal complaining, and we can choose to let it go, instead using that moment as an opportunity to practice mindful breathing. We can also practice letting go of our attachment to praise and blame. When someone offers us praise, we can receive it gracefully, but without clinging to it as a source of our self-worth. When someone offers us criticism, we can listen to it openly for any grain of truth, but without letting it shatter our sense of inner peace. Seeing both praise and blame as just the passing weather of other people's minds is a profound form of freedom. Each of these small acts of letting go is like a single repetition in a workout. It strengthens our non-attachment muscle, preparing us for the times when we will have to let go of things that are much, much heavier. Life inevitably brings us great losses. We lose loved ones, we lose jobs, we lose our health, we lose our youth. No amount of spiritual practice can make these experiences painless. The pain we feel is a direct measure of the love we had. To not feel pain in the face of great loss would be to not be human. The practice of letting go does not eliminate the first arrow, the raw, unavoidable pain of the loss itself. What it does is help us to avoid shooting ourselves with the endless barrage of second, third, and fourth arrows. These are the arrows of guilt, regret, endless what if scenarios, and the story that our life is now over. Our practice becomes a lifeboat in the storm of our grief. It allows us to be fully present with the waves of sorrow, to feel them completely without being drowned by them. We learn to let the grief move through us, honoring it as a sacred process, without becoming permanently identified with the story of "I am a grieving person." We rely on our mindfulness to stay present. We use our metta practice to offer kindness to our own broken heart, and we lean on our sangha, our community of trusted friends, to hold us when we cannot hold ourselves. This practice also profoundly alters our relationship with time. So much of our mental energy is consumed by clinging to the past or grasping for the future. We carry the past with us in the form of regrets, resentments, and old identities. We rehearse old grievances. We replay our mistakes. We cling to golden ages that are long gone. The art of letting go is the practice of gently placing these heavy bags down. We cannot change the past. We can only learn from it, make peace with it, and release its power over our present moment. Similarly, we live in a state of constant projection into the future, clinging to our hopes and terrified by our anxieties. We try to control outcomes, that are fundamentally uncontrollable. Letting go of the future does not mean we stop planning or acting responsibly. It means we do our best in the present, and then we release our attachment to the results. We plant the seed with care, and then we allow the sun and the rain to do their work. By letting go of our grip on what was and what might be, we are finally free to inhabit the only time that is ever truly real, right now. There is a famous Zen story of two monks, one senior and one junior, who were on a long journey. They came to a wide, fast-flowing river. On the riverbank stood a beautiful young woman in fine clothes, who was afraid to cross. Monastic rules strictly forbade the monks from touching a woman. Without a word, the senior monk walked over to the woman, lifted her into his arms, carried her across the turbulent river, and gently set her down on the other side. He then continued on his way. The junior monk was utterly scandalized. He followed his senior, his mind in a turmoil of judgment and indignation. For hours, he walked in seething silence, replaying the event over and over in his mind. Finally, unable to contain himself any longer, he burst out, "Brother, how could you do that? You know we are forbidden to touch a woman. You have broken a sacred rule." The senior monk stopped, looked at his junior with a calm, compassionate gaze, and replied softly, "Brother, I left the woman by the riverbank hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story beautifully illustrates the heart of this practice. We all carry things far longer than we need: tooled hurts, resentments, fears, and judgments. The art of letting go is the practice of learning how to travel lightly through this life. It is the wisdom of opening our hands to both receive the gifts of the present moment and to release them when it is time for them to pass. As we let go of these unnecessary burdens, our minds, once cluttered and heavy, become more spacious, open, and clear. This newfound clarity, this uncluttered mental landscape, is the very ground from which the flower of true wisdom, or prajna, can finally begin to bloom. By learning the gentle art of letting go, we begin to unburden our minds. We release our tight grip on the past, on the future, on our possessions, our opinions, and our rigid sense of self. This act of release creates a profound sense of spaciousness within us. The mind, once a cluttered and noisy room, gradually becomes quiet, open, and clear. And it is in this clear and tranquil space that something new can begin to dawn. This is the arising of prajna, a Sanskrit word most often translated as wisdom. But prajna is a very specific and profound kind of wisdom, fundamentally different from what we normally consider knowledge. If the journey so far has been about calming the heart and clearing the mind, the cultivation of prajna is about learning to see with that clear mind, to see into the very nature of reality itself. In our modern world, we place an immense value on knowledge. Knowledge is the accumulation of facts, data, and information. It is stored in books, in databases, and in our own memories. We can have knowledge about botany, knowing the Latin names of 1,000 different plants. We can have knowledge about physics, able to write out the equations that describe the motion of the planets. We can have knowledge about Buddhism, having memorized the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. Knowledge is conceptual, it is based in language, and it is passed from one person to another. It is immensely useful, but it has its limits. Prajna, on the other hand, is not about accumulation, but about penetration. It is a direct, non-conceptual, and deeply personal insight into the way things are. Prajna is not knowing the name of the plant. It is the direct experience of the plant's vibrant life force. Prajna is not knowing the equation for gravity. It is the feeling of your own feet firmly planted on the earth. And prajna is not just being able to recite the truth of impermanence, anicca. It is the direct, visceral seeing of a thought arising and vanishing within your own mind. Knowledge is the map. Prajna is arriving in the territory and seeing it with your own eyes. The reason this distinction is so crucial is that prajna cannot be grasped by the thinking mind alone. Our ordinary, conceptual mind works by chopping reality up into separate bits. It creates categories, labels, and dualities, self and other, good and bad, past and future, birth and death. This is an essential tool for navigating the practical world, but it cannot perceive the deeper reality of wholeness and flow. The thinking mind is like a camera that takes a series of still photographs, while reality is the flowing, continuous movie. Prajna is the wisdom that sees the movie. It is the insight that illuminates the interconnectedness of all things into being, the transient nature of all forms, anicca, and the empty, process-like nature of the self, anatta. Trying to understand these truths with the thinking mind is like trying to pick up water with a fork. The tool is simply not designed for the task. The thinking mind builds the conceptual cages we live in. Prajna is the wisdom that sees that the cage door has been open all along. This is why we cannot simply think our way to liberation. We must practice a method that allows us to quiet the conceptual mind and awaken a different way of knowing. That method is vipassana, or insight meditation. As we have seen, vipassana is the practice of observing our own experience from moment to moment with a clear and non-judgmental attention. It is the very laboratory in which prajna is cultivated. When we sit on the cushion and bring our attention to the breath, we are not just calming ourselves down, we are conducting an experiment. We watch as the in-breath arises on its own, sustains for a moment, and then passes away, to be replaced by the out-breath. In this simple, repeated observation, we are not thinking about impermanence. We are experiencing it directly. We are seeing anicca in real time. When a difficult sensation like a pain in the knee arises, our vipassana practice encourages us to investigate it. We bring a curious awareness to the raw sensations, and we discover that the pain is not a solid, monolithic thing. It is a shifting, vibrating, and changing field of sensations. We see for ourselves that it has no solid core, and we also see that there is no solid me who is the owner of this pain. It is simply an impersonal process unfolding. This is the direct seeing of anatta. When a powerful emotion like anger surges through us, we watch it as a storm of energy and heat in the body. We see it peak, and we see it eventually subside, all without us needing to do anything. We see directly that even the most powerful states are impermanent, and that our identification with them is the source of our suffering. This is the direct insight into dukkha and its possible end. Vipassana, then, is the engine of prajna. It is the process by which we systematically deconstruct our mistaken views about reality, not by arguing with them, but by seeing for ourselves that they do not match our direct experience. With each moment of clear seeing, the grip of our old conditioning and confusion is loosened, allowing the natural light of wisdom to shine through. There is a famous and powerful metaphor used in Zen to describe this difference between knowledge and prajna. The teachings, the scriptures, the words of the Buddha, and even the words in this very script are all said to be like a finger pointing at the moon. The moon represents ultimate reality, the direct, unmediated truth of our existence, the taste of liberation itself. The finger is an essential tool. Without it, we might not know where to look. It gives us direction and guidance. However, many people make a fundamental error. they mistake the finger for the moon. They become obsessed with the finger. They study it, analyze it, measure its length and its angle. They might write learned commentaries on the finger or argue passionately with others who follow a slightly different finger. They can become great scholars, experts on every aspect of the finger, but in all their fixation on the finger, they completely forget to look up. They never actually see the moon. Prajna is not the knowledge of the finger. Prajna is having the wisdom to look where the finger is pointing and to see the luminous, beautiful moon for yourself. All the teachings are provisional, a raft to be used to cross the river. Once you have reached the other shore, you do not need to carry the raft on your back. This wisdom, this prajna, is sometimes described as a sword. It is the sword of discernment that cuts through the thick knots of ignorance and delusion that are the root cause of all suffering. It is not a sword of violence or aggression, but a sword of light, of clarity. It severs our attachment to harmful views. It cuts away the stories that we tell ourselves about our own limitations, and it liberates us from the prison of our conditioning. It is the ultimate tool for freedom. Thus, prajna is the deep, intuitive, and liberating, seeing that arises naturally from a mind that has been made spacious through letting go, stable through concentration, and clear through mindful inquiry. It is the culmination of the investigative aspect of our journey. Yet, for the path to be complete, for our humanity to be whole, this sharp, penetrating wisdom cannot stand alone. A sword, no matter how sharp, can be cold. A mind that is all wisdom, but no warmth, can become arid and disconnected. For our awakening to be a truly healing and transformative force in the world, this clear-seeing insight must be balanced and held by the boundless warmth of an open heart. The sword of prajna must be wielded by the hand of karuna, compassion. The two wings of the bird, wisdom and compassion, must be developed together so that we may fly freely and gracefully. As we journey deeper along this path of awakening, we begin to see that it is not a single, linear road, but a dynamic interplay of two vital qualities, two essential energies of the heart and mind. On the one hand, we have cultivated prajna, the sharp, penetrating sword of wisdom that cuts through delusion and sees reality as it is. On the other hand, we have cultivated karuna and metta, the boundless, warm heart of compassion that embraces all of life with unconditional love. It is tempting to see these as separate paths, or perhaps to feel more naturally drawn to one than the other. But the ultimate teaching of this path is that these two are not separate. They are two wings of the same great bird, and only when they are developed in harmony and balance can we truly soar into the sky of liberation. Wisdom without compassion can be cold and disconnected. Compassion without wisdom can be blind and ineffective. Their perfect union is the very essence of a fully awakened life. Let us first explore the potential danger of developing wisdom without a corresponding development of compassion. It is possible for a practitioner, through diligent meditation and intellectual study, to develop a very sharp and analytical mind. They can deconstruct their own experience with remarkable precision, seeing the impermanent, conditioned nature of every thought, feeling, and sensation. They can speak with great clarity about the doctrines of anatta and anicca. This is the archetype of the practitioner who is all head and no heart. From the outside, they may seem advanced, but their state is a precarious and incomplete one. It is like climbing to the peak of a very high, snow-covered mountain. The view is vast, and the air is crystal clear, offering a panoramic perspective on the landscape below, but it is also freezing, barren, and devoid of life. This unbalanced wisdom can lead to a profound spiritual dryness. Life, in all its messy, vibrant, and emotional glory, can come to be seen as nothing more than a collection of impersonal, conditioned processes. The sense of wonder, of reverence, of love for the world can wither. A more significant danger, however, is the arising of spiritual pride. The practitioner can begin to use their insight as a weapon, a tool to elevate their own ego. They may look down upon others who are still caught in illusion, who are still struggling with ordinary emotions and attachments. Their language can become critical and judgmental, their presence aloof and unapproachable. They have sharpened the sword of prajna, but they wield it without the gentle hand of compassion, and it becomes a tool for creating more separation, not less. In its most extreme form, this unbalanced wisdom can lead to a kind of nihilistic inaction. Seeing the emptiness of all things can be misinterpreted as a justification for apathy. If it's all just a dream, if it's all impermanent, why bother trying to help? Why engage with the suffering of the world? This is a profound misunderstanding. True wisdom sees not only that the self is empty, but that all beings are interconnected in this emptiness. And this very insight is what gives rise to a powerful and urgent call to compassionate action. The cold mountain peak of wisdom alone is not a home. It is a beautiful but desolate outpost. Now, let us examine the opposite imbalance, the danger of developing compassion without the guidance of wisdom. This state is often more appealing and more socially acceptable, but it is equally fraught with peril. This is the archetype of the practitioner who is all heart and no head. They possess a genuine and powerful desire to help others, to alleviate suffering wherever they see it. Their heart is open, sensitive, and full of good intentions. They are the boundless caregivers, the tireless volunteers, the friends who will do anything to help. But without the clear sight of wisdom to guide them, their compassion can become blind, sentimental, and ultimately, even harmful. One of the greatest dangers for the person with unbalanced compassion is burnout. Lacking the deep understanding of anatta, of not-self, they do not have clear boundaries. They feel the pain of others so acutely that they absorb it as their own. They become enmeshed in the suffering they are trying to alleviate, unable to distinguish between healthy empathy, which is feeling for another, and a draining codependence, which is feeling as another. They are the well-intentioned rescuer who jumps into a raging river to save a drowning person, but because they themselves do not know how to swim with the wisdom of equanimity, they are quickly pulled under by the current, and two people end up drowning instead of one. Their emotional reserves are depleted, leading to exhaustion, resentment, and so-called compassion fatigue. Furthermore, compassion without the discernment of wisdom can devolve into what is known as idiot compassion. This is a kindness that, in its eagerness to relieve immediate discomfort, actually ends up perpetuating a cycle of suffering. It is the parent who gives their child anything they want to stop a tantrum, thereby teaching the child that tantrums are an effective strategy. It is the friend who constantly enables the self-destructive behavior of an addict because they cannot bear the difficulty of setting a firm boundary. It is the offering of help that isn't truly wanted or needed, serving only to satisfy the helper's own egoic need to be seen as a good person. True compassion is not always about making someone feel comfortable in the short term. Sometimes, the most compassionate action is to speak a difficult truth, to set a boundary, or to allow someone to face the natural consequences of their actions, as this may be the only way they can truly learn and grow. Wisdom provides the clarity to know the difference. The path to a full and balanced awakening, therefore, lies in the sacred marriage of wisdom and compassion. They are not two separate things to be cultivated independently. They are two qualities that, when the conditions are right, naturally give rise to and deepen one another. True, unshakable compassion is the inevitable fruit of profound wisdom. When prajna truly penetrates the illusion of the separate self, when we see with every fiber of our being that the boundaries we erect between me and you are just a fabrication of the mind, the entire basis for selfishness and indifference dissolves. The question, "Why should I care about your suffering?" becomes as absurd as asking, "Why should my right hand care if my left hand is on fire?" It is not a moral calculation or a virtuous choice. It is the spontaneous, intelligent response of a unified organism. When we see a child fall, the hand reaches out before the mind has time to think. This is the reflex of karuna born from the wisdom of interbeing. Conversely, compassion is the very force that softens the heart and opens the mind, creating the fertile ground in which wisdom can grow. It is very difficult to see reality clearly when our heart is closed and defensive. Compassion is the great dissolver of the ego's armor. When we practice metta for ourselves, offering ourselves kindness in the face of our own pain and perceived flaws, we create the inner safety that allows us to look at our own failings without judgment. This self-compassion is what gives us the courage to practice vipassana honestly, to see the truths of our own greed, anger, and ignorance without being crushed by them. When we practice karuna for others, especially for those we find difficult, we are forced to let go of our rigid opinions and judgments. This act of opening our heart to another person's humanity makes our own mind more flexible, more spacious, and more receptive to the subtle truths of the Dharma. Compassion melts the ice of our fixed views, allowing the clear water of wisdom to flow. In practice, wisdom and compassion function as our two essential guides. Wisdom is the eye that sees the path ahead, that understands the nature of the terrain, that distinguishes between what is skillful and what is unskillful. Compassion is the heart that provides the energy, the motivation, the unwavering commitment to take the next step on that path for the benefit of all. Wisdom without compassion lacks the motivation to act. Compassion without wisdom lacks the clarity to act effectively. And so we come back to our image of the bird. Its great desire is to fly in the boundless sky of freedom. One of its wings is named wisdom. It is sharp and aerodynamic, cutting through the winds of confusion and providing clear direction. The other wing is named compassion. It is broad and powerful, catching the currents of love and providing the lift and propulsion needed for the journey. If the bird tries to fly only with the wing of wisdom, it will be all direction and no power, just spinning in tight, analytical circles, unable to get off the ground. If it tries to fly only with the wing of compassion, it will be all power and no direction, flapping chaotically, full of noble energy, but ultimately tumbling to the earth. It is only when the bird learns to beat both wings together, in perfect rhythm, in perfect balance, in perfect harmony, that it can truly soar. This seamless integration of a clear mind and a warm heart, of seeing things just as they are and responding with boundless love, is the hallmark of true awakening. And it is this very state of integrated, balanced being that opens the door to a profound and unshakable form of happiness, a joy that is not dependent on the changing winds of fortune, but arises from the depths of our own liberated heart. Having woven together the two essential wings of wisdom and compassion, we begin to experience a new way of being in the world. A mind that sees clearly and a heart that loves freely gives rise to a quality of life that is both profoundly peaceful and deeply engaged. This brings us to a topic that lies at the very heart of the human quest, the pursuit of happiness. From our first breath to our last, everything we do is driven by a fundamental desire to be happy and to avoid suffering. Yet, for so many of us, lasting happiness remains an elusive prize, a fleeting visitor that never stays for long. This is because we are often looking for happiness in all the wrong places. The wisdom of the Zen path invites us to make a crucial distinction between the temporary, conditional state of pleasure and a deeper, more resilient form of well-being, known as sukha. This is not just a semantic difference. It is a fundamental reorientation of our entire approach to life. A shift from a life of frantic getting to a life of peaceful being. Let us first examine what we normally think of as happiness. This is the happiness of hedonic pleasure. It is entirely dependent on external conditions and sensory stimulation. We feel this kind of happiness when we eat a delicious meal, when we receive a compliment, when we buy a new gadget, when we go on vacation, when our favorite team wins. It is a happiness that is based on getting what we want and avoiding what we don't want. It provides a temporary spike of pleasant feeling, a momentary high. There is nothing inherently wrong with these pleasures. They are a part of life to be enjoyed. The problem arises from our reliance on them as our primary source of well-being. This is because, as we have seen through our investigation of anicca, all external conditions are impermanent. The delicious meal ends. The new gadget becomes old. The vacation is over. The praise is followed by criticism. Because our pleasure is tied to these unstable conditions, the pleasure itself is inherently unstable, fragile, and fleeting. This fragility creates a deep-seated anxiety. We are constantly worried about losing the things that give us pleasure, and we are constantly striving to acquire new sources of it. This is the engine of tanha, the thirst that drives us onto what modern psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. We achieve a goal or acquire a possession. We feel a brief spike of happiness, and then our satisfaction level quickly returns to its baseline. To get the same feeling again, we need a new and often bigger stimulus. The person who was happy with a small apartment now needs a house. The person who was thrilled with a pay raise now needs a promotion. We are caught in an endless cycle of wanting, getting, and wanting again, a cycle that guarantees a life of restless dissatisfaction. This is the great deception of worldly happiness. It promises lasting fulfillment, but delivers only fleeting pleasure, leaving us thirstier than before. Sukha, on the other hand, is a different kind of happiness altogether. It is not dependent on external conditions or sensory pleasure. It is a deep and abiding joy that arises from within, a joy that is the natural state of a mind that is at peace. Sukha is not the happiness of excitement, but the happiness of stillness. It is not the happiness of getting more, but the happiness of needing less. Its source is not addition, but subtraction. The subtraction of the inner static, the mental toxins of craving, aversion, and confusion. When we are no longer constantly at war with ourselves, no longer endlessly grasping for what we don't have and pushing away what we don't like, the mind naturally settles into a state of balance, clarity, and ease. Sukha is the sweet fragrance that emanates from a mind that is free. This quiet joy can be found in the simplest of moments, moments that we usually overlook in our frantic search for stimulation. It is the feeling of contentment while watching a sunset. It is the simple pleasure of a quiet walk, feeling the air on your skin. It is the deep satisfaction of being fully present with a loved one, listening with an open heart. This kind of happiness does not shout, it whispers. It is not a peak experience to be chased, but a gentle ground of being to be inhabited. It is the peace that comes from letting go of the struggle, from accepting life on its own terms. and from finding a deep sense of sufficiency, right here, right now, with things exactly as they are. Perhaps the most profound aspect of sukha is that it can coexist with life's difficulties. Hedonic pleasure and pain are mutually exclusive. You cannot feel the pleasure of a fine meal while you have a painful toothache. But sukha is different. It is like the deep, silent, immovable ocean. Life's pains and sorrows, the inevitable losses, failures, and disappointments are like waves on the surface. If our identity and our well-being are invested only in the surface, we will be endlessly tossed about by the changing weather. But if we can learn to rest our awareness in the deep, quiet equanimity of the ocean itself, we can hold the waves of pain within a larger field of peace. A person established in sukha can experience deep sadness at the loss of a loved one. For example, they feel the pain fully, a testament to their love. Yet, at the same time, they can be aware of the vast, peaceful presence of their own awakened heart, holding that sadness with boundless compassion. The pain is a wave, but their fundamental well-being, their sukha, is the ocean, which remains undisturbed. This is a resilience that worldly happiness can never offer. The bliss that can arise in deep states of meditation, known as the jhanas, are a powerful testament to this truth. Practitioners who cultivate a high degree of concentration can enter states of profound rapture and bliss that are completely independent of any input from the five senses. This proves that the human mind has the innate capacity to generate its own profound happiness, a joy far more powerful and satisfying than anything the external world can provide. It shows us that we have been looking outside for a treasure that has been buried in our own backyard all along. There is an old story of a wealthy millionaire who had everything a person could possibly desire: mansions, yachts, private jets, and a vast fortune. Yet, he was tormented by a deep and persistent unhappiness. He traveled the globe, seeking cures from famous doctors and advice from renowned gurus, but his feeling of emptiness only grew. One day, he heard tales of a wise old hermit living high in a remote mountain cave, who was said to be the happiest man in the world. Determined to find the secret, the millionaire undertook the arduous journey. After many days of climbing, he found the hermit sitting at the mouth of his cave, radiating a palpable sense of peace and joy. The hermit owned nothing but a single wooden bowl and a tattered set of robes. The millionaire, in his expensive clothes, approached the hermit and said, "I am a very rich man, but I am miserable. You have nothing, yet you seem so happy. I will give you anything you want if you will just tell me the secret to your happiness." The hermit smiled, his eyes filled with a gentle light. "The secret is that I cannot sell you my happiness," he replied, "because you are looking for it in the wrong way. You believe happiness is something you get by adding more to your life. I have found it by needing less." This is the great shift in perspective that the path invites. True happiness, sukha, is not a treasure to be found, but a quality of being to be uncovered. It is the peace that is revealed when we finally stop our frantic digging for it in the barren soil of the external world. This quiet, resilient joy can hold both the pleasures and the pains of life with a steady and loving presence. But life, as we know, will not always be quiet. It will inevitably bring great storms, fierce winds of change that threaten to capsize even the most stable vessel. To navigate these tempests, to remain upright and balanced in the face of all that life presents, we must cultivate the ultimate stabilizer, the final perfection of the heart. This is the unshakable quality of upekkha, or equanimity. We have journeyed to the place in the heart where a quiet and resilient joy, a sukha, can be discovered, a well-being that is not dependent on the shifting fortunes of the external world. We have learned that this deep peace can even coexist with life's sorrows, much like the vast, silent ocean can hold the turbulent waves on its surface. But life does not only bring waves, it brings hurricanes. It brings fierce and relentless storms of gain and loss, praise and blame, pleasure and pain, that threaten to capsize even the most seasoned spiritual traveler. To navigate these ultimate tests with grace and freedom, we must cultivate the crowning virtue of the awakened heart, the final perfection that brings all other qualities into flawless balance. This is the practice of upekkha, a Pali word often translated as equanimity. It is the quality of an unshakable heart, a mind that remains spacious, balanced, and at peace in the face of all the changing vicissitudes of life. It is essential, right from the outset, to distinguish upekkha from its pale and lifeless cousin, indifference. Indifference is a state of withdrawal, of emotional numbness. It is a defense mechanism born of fear. When faced with overwhelming pain or complexity, the heart shuts down and says, "I don't care," in order to protect itself. Indifference is a contraction, a closing off. Upekkha, or equanimity, is the exact opposite. It is not a closing down, but a radical opening up. It is the capacity to keep the heart wide open to the fullness of life, to both the joy and the pain, without being thrown off balance. It is born not of fear, but of profound wisdom and boundless love. It does not say, "I don't care." It says, "I care so deeply, and yet I accept that I cannot control the outcome." It is the pinnacle of a loving and engaged heart, a heart so spacious that it can hold all of life's experiences without being possessed by them. Imagine a wise and loving parent watching their young child learn to walk. The parent is fully present, their attention filled with love and encouragement. As the child takes a wobbly step and then tumbles, the parent does not panic. They do not immediately rush in to prevent every single fall. They understand that stumbling, falling, and getting back up is an essential part of the learning process. The parent's heart is not indifferent, it is filled with love. But their love is balanced by the wisdom to know when to help and when to allow the child to find their own strength. This calm, steady, loving, and wise presence is the very essence of upekkha. It is the ability to care deeply while letting go of the anxious need to control. This profound stability of mind does not arise by accident. It is the natural fruit of a deep, experiential understanding of the two great laws of reality we have already explored. The first is anicca, impermanence. When we have seen over and over again in our meditation and in our lives that all things are in a constant state of flux, we are no longer so shocked or devastated when things change. We understand that pleasure is a temporary visitor, so we enjoy its company without desperately clinging to it. We understand that pain is also a temporary visitor, so we can endure its presence with patience, knowing it will not last forever. We see that gain and loss are two sides of the same coin. The very nature of having something is the potential for losing it. By truly internalizing the truth of impermanence, we cease our futile war with reality. We stop demanding that life be stable and predictable, and we learn to ride its changing waves with skill and balance. The second foundation of equanimity is a clear understanding of karma, or the law of cause and effect. This is not a belief in a cosmic system of reward and punishment, but a practical recognition of what we can and cannot control. We can control our own intentions and our own actions in this present moment. We cannot, however, control the results or outcomes of those actions, because those outcomes are conditioned by a near infinite number of factors beyond our influence. The untrained mind is constantly fixated on the outcome, becoming elated when things go its way and devastated when they do not. The equanimous mind shifts its focus. It places its energy and intention on acting with as much wisdom and compassion as possible in the present moment, and then it releases its attachment to the result. It is the wisdom of the farmer who carefully prepares the soil, plants the best seeds, and tends to the field with diligence. She has done everything in her power, but she cannot control the weather, the rain, the sun, or the possibility of blight. She does her work with integrity, and then she lets go, accepting the harvest, whatever it may be. This is the peace of equanimity. The traditional teachings describe 8 specific challenges that test our equanimity. They are known as the 8 worldly winds, and they come in 4 pairs of opposites. The first pair is pleasure and pain. The second is gain and loss. The third is fame and disrepute. And the fourth is praise and blame. Our entire lives are spent navigating these winds. The untrained mind is like a small unanchored boat, blown wildly in one direction by the wind of praise, then violently in the opposite direction by the wind of blame. It is lifted up on a high wave of gain, only to be plunged into a trough of loss. This is an exhausting and unstable way to live. The practice of upekkha is the cultivation of a deep and heavy anchor that holds our vessel steady. No matter how fiercely the winds may blow, the winds still come, the waves still rise and fall, but the core of our being remains centered, calm, and at peace. This is not an emotional numbness. It is a profound and resilient stability. We can still enjoy praise without becoming arrogant. We can still learn from blame without being shattered. We can still appreciate gain without clinging, and we can still navigate loss without despair. Our formal meditation practice is the direct training ground for this skill. Every time we sit on the cushion, we are buffeted by the smaller gusts of these worldly winds. A pleasant feeling arises, and we practice observing it without grasping. An unpleasant sensation arises, and we practice being with it without aversion. A neutral state of boredom arises, and we practice staying present without seeking distraction. Every moment we are able to observe our inner experience without being swept away by our habitual reactions. We are strengthening the muscle of equanimity. We are rehearsing, in the safe space of our meditation, the very skills we need to navigate the larger challenges of our life. The wisdom of equanimity is beautifully captured in a timeless Taoist story about a farmer and his horse. One day, the farmer's only horse ran away. His neighbors came to console him, saying, "Oh, what terrible luck." The farmer simply replied, "Who knows?" A week later, the horse returned, leading a herd of 10 magnificent wild horses with it. The neighbors gathered again, this time to congratulate him. "What incredible good luck!" they exclaimed. The farmer again replied, "Who knows?" The next day, the farmer's son was trying to tame one of the wild horses when he was thrown off and his leg was badly broken. The neighbors came to offer their sympathy. "How awful," they said. "Truly bad luck." The farmer just shrugged and said, "Who knows?" A few weeks later, the emperor's army marched into the village, conscripting every able-bodied young man for a brutal war from which few would return. The farmer's son, because of his broken leg, was the only young man in the village to be spared. This story shows the profound folly of our rush to label events as good or bad. Our perspective is always limited. Upekkha is the spacious wisdom of who knows. It is the patience to refrain from immediate judgment, to see the bigger picture, and to rest in the uncertainty of life's unfolding with a calm and trusting heart. Upekkha, then, is the grand culmination of our heart's training. It is the perfect, luminous balance between the penetrating insight of wisdom and the boundless warmth of compassion. It allows us to love the world fully without needing it to be any different than it is. It allows us to act with great courage and commitment for the well-being of others, while simultaneously surrendering our attachment to the fruits of our actions. It is the unshakable peace of a heart that has found its true center. With this profound stability as our foundation, we are now able to look back upon the entire journey we have taken, not as a linear path with a goal at the end, but as a spiral of ever-deepening understanding. We are ready to investigate the ultimate nature of liberation itself, not as a distant future promise, but as a possibility that exists right here, in this very moment. Having journeyed through the practices that steady the mind and open the heart, that cultivate wisdom and foster compassion, we arrive at the peak of our inquiry. We must now confront the very idea of a peak itself. In any great human endeavor, we are conditioned to think in terms of a goal, a finish line, a final destination. In the spiritual life, this ultimate goal has been given many names: enlightenment, liberation, nirvana, awakening. We hold these words in our minds and imagine them as a distant, luminous shore, a state of perfect, perpetual bliss that we might one day reach if we practice hard enough, if we are worthy enough. We see it as the final prize at the end of a long and arduous race. This section is an invitation to lay down this entire way of thinking. It is an invitation to see that the relentless search for a future spiritual attainment is the most subtle and powerful trap of all, and that true liberation is not a destination to be reached, but a reality to be discovered in this very moment. To understand this trap, we must look at a phenomenon known as spiritual materialism. This is the ego's brilliant and insidious way of co-opting the spiritual path for its own survival and enhancement. The ego, as we have seen, is fundamentally driven by tanha, the thirst for becoming, for acquiring, for being more. When we embark on a spiritual path, the ego does not simply disappear. It often just changes its clothes. It trades its desire for a fancy car, for a desire for a powerful mystical experience. It trades its ambition for a promotion at work, for an ambition to be seen as a deeply spiritual person. It stops collecting material possessions and starts collecting spiritual accomplishments, comparing its progress to others, secretly judging those it deems less advanced, and puffing itself up with pride at every small insight. Enlightenment becomes the ultimate object of desire, the most exotic and valuable jewel that the ego can imagine, adding to its collection. This is the great and tragic irony of spiritual materialism. The very path that is designed to free us from the chains of craving becomes just another, more refined form of that same craving. The practices that are meant to help us see through the illusion of the ego become tools to build a new spiritual ego, one that is even more subtle and harder to see than the old one. We are still running on the same treadmill of dissatisfaction, still believing that happiness and peace are located somewhere else, in some future state that we have not yet attained. We meditate with a subtle tension, a striving, a desire to get somewhere. We are still at war with the present moment, still judging it as not good enough, not enlightened enough. This is not the path to freedom. It is just a more scenic route back to the same prison of self-preoccupation. To break free from this trap, we must return to the original meaning of nirvana. The word literally means to extinguish or to blow out, like blowing out a candle flame. The question then becomes, what is it that is being extinguished? The answer is simple and direct. What is extinguished are the three fires that fuel all of our suffering: These are the fire of greed, the obsessive wanting and clinging, the fire of hatred, the energy of aversion, anger, and ill will, and the fire of delusion, the fog of ignorance that prevents us from seeing reality as it is. These three fires are known as the three poisons, and they are the root cause of all dukkha. Nirvana, then, is not a heavenly realm we go to, nor is it a superhuman state we achieve. Nirvana is the quality of any moment in which these three fires are not burning in our heart and mind. This understanding completely changes our relationship to practice and to life itself. Liberation is no longer a far-off, distant goal. It becomes a present moment possibility. When you are sitting in your garden and you look at a rose, and in that moment, your mind is not trying to possess its beauty, nor is it comparing it to other roses, nor is it lost in some story about the rose, but is simply present with the raw, vibrant reality of the flower that is a moment of nirvana. When you are cut off in traffic, and your habitual reaction of anger begins to arise, but because of your practice, you are able to see it, breathe with it, and let it go without acting on it. That moment of non-hatred is a moment of nirvana. When you are able to listen to someone with a different political view, without the fog of your own prejudices and opinions clouding your mind, but with a genuine openness to understand their humanity, that moment of non-delusion is a moment of nirvana. Liberation is not something we gain. It is what is revealed when we let go of the inner toxins that obscure our natural state of clarity and peace. It is the peace of the unconditioned, a peace that is not dependent on circumstances being pleasant, but on the absence of our own inner defilements. This brings us to the profound teaching, encapsulated in a famous quote by Thich Nhat Hanh. There is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. If we believe that the path is merely a means to an end, a difficult journey we must endure to reach the destination of happiness, then our entire journey will be characterized by a sense of striving and insufficiency. We will always feel like we are not there yet. But if we understand that the way is the happiness, everything is transformed. The path is not a series of steps toward liberation. Each skillful step is an act of liberation itself. Every conscious breath we take is not just a preparation for a future peace. That breath is a moment of peace, a moment of freedom from the tyranny of our restless mind. Every time we mindfully let go of a small resentment, we are not just practicing for some great future act of forgiveness. We are experiencing the freedom of a forgiving heart right now. Every time we offer a genuine wish of loving kindness to ourselves or to another, we are not just working toward becoming a compassionate person. We are inhabiting our own compassionate nature in that very instant. The focus of our practice, therefore, shifts entirely. It moves from the anxious, future-oriented question, "Am I there yet?" to the calm, present moment inquiry, "Am I truly here now?" It shifts from a project of self-improvement, which subtly reinforces the idea that we are currently flawed, to a practice of self-acceptance, which knows that our awakened nature is already present beneath the clouds of our conditioning. We stop trying so hard to become a Buddha, and we start practicing the simple art of being a kinder, more present human being in this moment. The path is not a ladder we climb to escape the messy reality of life. It is a way of walking that allows us to enter more and more deeply and gracefully into the heart of life as it is, with all its beauty and all its pain. There is a story of a young pilgrim who dedicates his life to finding a legendary sacred mountain. He is told that at its summit lies the ultimate truth of existence. He embarks on a long and difficult journey, crossing deserts, navigating dense forests, and enduring immense hardship. He is driven by the singular vision of reaching the peak and finally attaining the wisdom he seeks. After many years, weary and aged, He at last arrives at the base of the mountain and makes the final, arduous climb. At the very top, he finds a simple hut where an old Zen master sits, sipping tea and gazing out at the clouds below. The pilgrim, breathless and overwhelmed, prostrates himself and says, "Master, I have spent my life on this journey. Please, tell me, what profound wisdom, what great attainment, what ultimate truth did you gain when you finally reached this sacred peak?" The old master looks at the pilgrim with eyes full of compassion and warmth. He takes a slow sip of his tea and says softly, "When I arrived at the top of this mountain, I gained absolutely nothing." The pilgrim's heart sinks with disappointment. All this effort for nothing? The master, seeing his expression, smiles gently and adds, "You see, the journey up the mountain did not give me anything new, but it did require me to let go of everything I was carrying that was not essential. The view from up here is not a gain. It is a revelation, made possible only by the lightness of my pack. The spiritual journey does not add anything to us. It is a process of subtraction, of letting go of the burdens of ignorance and fear that we have carried for so long. Liberation is not about becoming a superhuman or escaping to some other realm. It is about becoming fully, sanely, and compassionately human, right here in the mud and the mire and the glory of this world." And what does a person who has made this journey do next? They do not build a temple to themselves on the mountaintop. They do not float away on a cloud of bliss. They walk back down the mountain. They return to the village, to the family, to the marketplace of everyday life, to the world of suffering and confusion. But they return with new eyes. They return with a transformed heart, ready to help, ready to serve, ready to live. Our journey has been a profound one. We began in the quiet desperation of a world that often feels overwhelming and devoid of meaning. We journeyed inward, exploring the nature of our own suffering and its causes, the deep truths of impermanence and not self. We learned to cultivate the tools of mindfulness, compassion, and equanimity, creating a stable and spacious heart-mind. We have climbed the mountain of self-inquiry and learned that the ultimate goal is not to reach a future destination called enlightenment, but to discover the freedom that is available in each present moment. And now, having reached this peak of understanding, we must complete the journey. The final step of the spiritual path is not to remain on the isolated mountaintop, enjoying a solitary peace. The final step is to walk back down the mountain and re-enter the world from which we came. It is the practice of returning to the marketplace. The marketplace is the symbol for our ordinary, everyday life. It is the world of work, of family, of relationships, of traffic, of grocery stores, of news headlines. It is messy, noisy, chaotic, and often confusing. The great question is, how do we bring the clarity and peace of the mountaintop into the hustle and bustle of the marketplace? Does the awakened life mean a life removed from all this? The Zen tradition offers a beautiful and profound answer in a series of 10 allegorical images known as the ox herding pictures. These images depict the entire journey of spiritual practice. The journey begins with the student searching for a lost ox, which represents our own true nature, our Buddha mind. After a long search, he finds its tracks, gets a glimpse of it, and then engages in the difficult struggle of catching and taming this wild, powerful animal, which is our untamed mind. Through patient practice, the mind becomes obedient and gentle, and the student rides the ox home in a state of blissful unity. But the journey does not end there. In the later stages, the student transcends even the need for the ox. He realizes the fundamental emptiness of both his self and his true nature. He arrives at a state of pure, boundless awareness, symbolized by an empty circle. This is the mountaintop, the state of absolute peace and non-duality. If the story ended here, it might suggest that the goal is a kind of transcendent withdrawal from the world. But crucially, there is a 10th and final picture. It is titled, "Entering the Marketplace with Bliss-Bestowing Hands." In this image, we see the enlightened master, now appearing as a simple, joyful, pot-bellied man, walking back into the village. He is not wearing special robes or preaching complex doctrines. He is sharing a drink with the local merchants, playing with the children, his face radiant with simple, unassuming joy. The text accompanying this picture says, "His shabby clothes are threadbare, and he is ever barefooted, yet his chest is filled with a boundless treasure." He brings his inner peace into the world, not by lecturing about it, but by living it, by sharing it through his very being. This is the ultimate expression of awakening, a complete and compassionate re-engagement with the ordinary world. This teaches us that an awakened life is not separate from our everyday life. It is the full and mindful inhabiting of it. It does not necessarily look spiritual from the outside. A person living a waking life may still go to an office, pay taxes, raise children, and deal with difficult colleagues. The outer form of their life might not change dramatically. What changes is the inner quality, the texture of their experience. Awakening is expressed in the patience they bring to a frustrating meeting. It is expressed in the mindful attention they give to chopping vegetables for their family's dinner. It is expressed in the way they listen, deeply and without judgment, to a friend in pain. It is found in the courage and equanimity with which they face a health crisis, and in the simple, unself-conscious joy they take in the beauty of a sunset or the laughter of a child. The proof of our practice is not in our ability to sit in a perfect lotus posture or to have mystical experiences in meditation. The proof of our practice is in how we treat the cashier at the grocery store, how we respond to our partner at the end of a long day, and how we care for our own hearts when we have made a mistake. You do not need to move to a monastery in the mountains to find this peace. Your kitchen can be your temple. Your office can be your sacred ground. Your family can be your spiritual community. The challenges of modern life are not obstacles to your practice. They are the very substance of your practice. The demanding boss is a teacher who is giving you a free, advanced seminar in patience and right speech. The traffic jam is a teacher offering you an unexpected opportunity to practice letting go of control. A painful heartbreak is a profound teacher, breaking your heart open and revealing its boundless capacity for compassion. When we adopt this view, our whole life becomes our dojo, our training hall. We stop waiting for the perfect, peaceful conditions to practice, and we learn to find our peace right in the middle of the imperfect conditions we already have. We learn that liberation is not about changing our life circumstances, but about changing our relationship to those circumstances. In the Buddhist tradition, the embodiment of this engaged compassion is the figure of Avalokiteshvara, or Kuan Yin, the bodhisattva of compassion. A bodhisattva is a being who has reached the brink of full enlightenment, but makes a vow to postpone their own final nirvana in order to remain in the world and help all other suffering beings. The story is told that as Avalokiteshvara attained great wisdom, she heard the cries of the countless suffering beings throughout the universe. Her heart was so moved by this sound that it shattered into 1,000 pieces. But out of this shattered heart, a new form arose, a being with 1,000 helping hands and 1,000 compassionate eyes. 1,000 eyes to see the myriad forms of suffering, from the grandest tragedies to the most private sorrows, and 1,000 hands to offer skillful, appropriate, and gentle help to each and every being. And in the palm of each of those 1,000 hands is another eye, symbolizing the crucial truth that all compassionate action must be guided by the clear sight of wisdom. This is the ultimate image of an awakened life, not a peaceful, static withdrawal, but a dynamic, limitless, and wise responsiveness to the needs of the world. And so, the spiritual journey is revealed not as a straight line from A to B, but as a great and beautiful circle. We begin in the ordinary world of suffering. We journey inward through the practices of mindfulness and meditation to the center of our being, where we discover a profound peace and a timeless, empty nature. But we do not stay there. We complete the circle by bringing the treasure of that inner discovery back out into the world we started from. We return to the marketplace, but we are not the same person who left. We see the world not as a threat to our peace, but as the very field in which our peace can be expressed and shared. We see every person not as a separate other, but as a reflection of ourselves. The path does not take us out of our lives. It plants us more firmly, more joyfully, and more compassionately within them, our hands open and ready to serve. We have traveled a great distance together on this inner journey. We began in the quiet hum of dissatisfaction that echoes through our modern world, with the feeling of being overwhelmed by the noise and speed of life. We started with the courage to look directly at our own suffering, not as a personal failure, but as a fundamental truth of the human condition. From there, we ventured deeper, uncovering the roots of this suffering in our own clinging mind, in our ceaseless thirst for things to be different than they are. We learned to see the transient, flowing nature of all experience, and we began to question the very existence of a solid, separate self at the center of it all. We have equipped ourselves with the profound tools of mindfulness and meditation, learning to sit with ourselves through storm and silence. We have watered the seeds of compassion for ourselves and for all beings, and we have explored what it means to live a life of conscious action, a life of deep and joyful engagement with the world as it is. And now, at the end of this long exploration, we arrive at a simple, yet revolutionary, conclusion. The peace that we have been seeking is not, and has never been, in a place. It is not in a future achievement, a different relationship, or a more perfect set of circumstances. Peace is not the absence of noise, of conflict, or of pain. It is a quality of being. It is the spaciousness of a mind that has learned to hold both joy and sorrow. It is the resilience of a heart that can be broken open by life and still remain loving. It is the deep, quiet ocean of our own awareness that remains undisturbed, even as the waves of gain and loss, pleasure and pain, rise and fall on its surface. The path of Zen, the path of awakening, is not a journey to become someone new, someone better, someone more spiritual. It is, in fact, the journey home. It is the process of gently peeling away the layers of fear, confusion, and conditioning to reveal the peaceful, wise, and compassionate nature that has been your true essence all along. You are not a victim of the world. You are not a slave to the endless chatter of your own mind. You have, within you, in this very moment, the tools of your own liberation. You have your breath, a constant anchor to the present. You have your awareness, a clear light that can illuminate any darkness. And you have your heart, an inexhaustible wellspring of kindness. This is not an end, but an invitation to continue the practice, to meet each day with a renewed commitment to be present, to be kind, to see clearly. The challenges of life will not disappear. The pain will still come. The winds will still blow. But you no longer have to be a ship without a rudder. You have learned how to navigate. You have learned that the peace you seek is not in a distant harbor, but in the skillfulness with which you sail your own vessel, right here, in the midst of the vast and unpredictable sea of life. It has been here all along, waiting patiently for you to come home.